Good evening, everyone. The time is 7:45, and a welcome to all of you around the world. It's starting to feel a little like winter, so I'm going to ask all of our guests to turn on our cameras. As you can see, I'm in a sweater, which means Johannesburg night times are getting cold. But Errol Anstey, you are not. Oh, well, you're blowing your nose, but you are not. You are not in a sweater. What's the weather like in Cape Town?
It's currently raining. It's cold and a bit freezing. But I'm indoors, and I'm scared that later on I'll get a bit too, steamed and challenged. So I'm keeping a light shirt on,
Oh, who's going to be challenging you tonight?
Or
Well, you deserve it. You're a politician. You have to be challenged.
Correct. That's why I have to keep cool.
Okay, you should be used to it. It can't be easy in the Cape City Council. It must be a challenging experience regardless.
And Howie, I've got my dogs just listening in tonight. I'm sure you haven't had dogs here before.
We've actually wanted to do a webinar on pets because we think there's enormous interest. Anton Ossip, do you have any pets?
I do, Howie. Good evening.
Good evening.
They're not watching, unless they're watching by themselves downstairs. They're not watching here.
I've always been amazed by people who've had pets who watch television with them and who suddenly bark at other dogs and horses. I've never had a pet who could do that. Are your pets TV watchers?
No, they're not. They prefer podcasts.
Sean Jammy, do you remember?
Howie.
Nice to see you. How things have changed since the days that you were a motoring journalist.
Right, yeah. I've gotten old, Howie. I just realized that.
But when you get behind the wheel of a vehicle, is there still the desire to test it, take it to its limits, see what a vehicle can do?
Howie, I'm on Discovery Insure, so I'll have to take the fifth on that. I'm an absolute angel behind the wheel.
I have no, but when you're in someone else's car.
Yeah. And I never, ever turn my phone off, so it's not tracking my driving, ever.
And Leon Tobias, everyone has a question for you because everyone knows your wife, the cook sister. She's been on each of our baking shows. She's probably the best cake maker in South Africa. The stuff she makes is amazing. But you look positively anorexic. Have you ever tasted any of your wife's baking? Okay, we'll definitely. Okay, now you're unmuted.
Unmuted. Howie, no, but I've got a whole box here for you, a whole nice box that's ready and waiting that could just get delivered during the course of the evening. A few boxes of macarons and a few surprises that Kim's got up her sleeve.
No, tell her I want to be thin and gorgeous like you. So first of all, come a little closer to your camera. You're a little far away from the microphone so we can hear you better. But
Howie, ask him what he was doing between 4 and 7 p.m. today, and then you'll know why he's positively anorexic.
My sense is whatever he was doing between 4 and 7 p.m. today, he was probably doing between 4 a.m. and 7 a.m. as well. Leon, how many kilometers today did you run, cycle, or swim?
So today, Howie, wasn't a major day. I only rode, I think it was about 44 kilometers this morning.
And what does a major day look like in your life?
Well, we're up at the crack of dawn with Benji. So Benji shouldn't be actually moaning about it because Benji's up even earlier than me. He's got 6 kids to look after and a lot of other things. So we're up 4:30 in the morning on the bicycle at 5 o'clock, back at about 6:45. 6:45 till 7:30, a bit of weights and stretching, and then work for the day. And after the day, it's either a gym, swim, or run on either days.
I want you to know, I know your family. I've met your family. They're fantastic. You should try spending some time with them. They are absolutely lovely. You don't have to run away from them anymore.
I don't know them, but I will. I'll get to meet them soon.
Sol Cowan, I can't believe that your day is madness starting at 5 a.m. on a bicycle.
No, but notwithstanding 5 a.m., I still exercise most days, whether it's cycling on a gym bike or walking. or windsurfing once in a while when I can get down to do it.
You were in Langebaan not so long ago, and is that not a Langebaan painting behind you?
It is. In fact, if you came to our house, all these paintings here are Langebaan. Yeah.
So I've been to your house, but since COVID, you won't let me in anymore.
You know what? Go and get the vaccine, and then we can talk.
I'm too young, Sol. You don't understand. I'm too young. This is the problems of youth.
Well, I thought the youth had more problems, like how do we take things forward? But that's another.
No, we're just collecting our comorbidities in the hope that we'll be able to get a vaccine sooner rather than later.
No, just on that subject, I must say I went yesterday to Discam in the head office, and it worked like it. I mean, you can stay in for 4 hours, but it works like a charm eventually, and everything works. The government site works, and everything else seems to work. So yeah, I was quite impressed.
Well, seeing we've got a doctor on the panel, we have to ask Dr. John Litton to turn on his mic. How's it, John?
How are you doing?
Good. I'm a little worried at the moment about third waves, because today 4 people I know, that's 5 of us, but 4 people I know called me to tell me that they'd contracted COVID. Are you on the healthcare side as worried as I am? I know Benji hasn't left his study or his bicycle in months.
Yeah, I mean, on a personal level, I'm less worried. Obviously, we've been, as you know, because of our healthcare, kind of a lot of our providers are frontline, so we've been out in the front as like an insurer for quite a bit. So on a personal level, less worried, but from a corporate level and a social level, yeah, concerned. I think that, as Sol said, the vaccine rollout, the private sector getting involved in the vaccine rollout, what Discam is doing by way of example couldn't have come soon enough. We've got to really get some volume out and drop the next wave. Yeah.
So Craig Peel, welcome. Lovely to meet you this evening. So apparently Mark Kramer said you are far better looking and better qualified to be on this panel than him.
No, I don't know about the better looking part, but certainly got the snow on their head.
It's not fair. You've still got head. There's some of us who wish we had enough head still to go a little grey.
Yeah, no, look, I don't think it's one of those things that I'll go bald very often, very quickly, but certainly started going white very early.
Okay, that's a sign of distinction. I think, Errol, you got lovely silver grey in that hair. Now, Errol and I used to sit next to each other in shul in the days where there still was shul. Errol, when last were you in Great Park shul?
Been more than a year, Howard, since just before lockdown.
Yeah, March the 12th for me. Do you think they're missing us, or do you think they've excommunicated us?
I'm sure they're missing all of us. I actually can't wait to get back one day after the vaccine.
Okay, we'll give it second dose, maybe plus 10 days when that happens. But Dave Bloch, where in the world do you join us from? Are you in Cape Town?
No, I'm actually here in Joburg.
Okay, fantastic. So why are you wearing clothes like it's storming outside, like Errol told us?
Because I was in the recording studio earlier. We're busy finalizing all of the audio requirements for the Sounds of Celebration concert. So I flew home and I've got the jacket still on. That's why I didn't, glam up and, do my hair for you guys, etc., etc.
Look, it looks fantastic, but I do have to ask, we're going to question your religious affiliations because you're not wearing a Uniqlo.
Yeah, sorry, it's Burberry.
It's that's so difficult. I trust you do have a Uniqlo in your collection.
I actually have a couple of Uniqlos in my collection and a few
colors. Just checking. That is a requirement. You have to have a Briss, a Uniqlo, and a shul membership.
I have 2 out of 3.
Okay, it's something. Now, Joan, I got so excited because I misread the message and I thought John Lithgow was coming on this evening. And And I'm even more excited that it's you, not John Lithgow. Are you related?
Joan, you're on mute.
Let's ask Joan to unmute.
Probably bottom left, Joan. You'll see a mute button. There you go.
And
so much. What a rookie mistake. Yeah. I wish I was related to John Lithgow. Thank you.
Okay, third actor from Third Rock from the Sun, and I see we've spelt it J-O-A-H.
Yeah, I don't know how you did that.
So if you go onto the top corner and mouse over it, you can probably correct the spelling. We've never really spelt anyone's names correctly on our broadcasts ever. Hey, Benji?
Yeah, I'll fix it. Yeah, no, there's also a little Lithgow castle named after my husband's ancestry. So that's in Scotland.
Is there a Lithgow tartan?
I don't know. There could be, but certainly there's a castle. Yeah.
You must go find your roots. It's very important.
Well, it's my husband's roots, so you know that's how it is.
Look, I hope there's some Lithgow whiskey that maybe he treats you to occasion.
Yeah, no, we're teetotalers.
Okay, I'm sorry. It's the Scottish ancestry completely wasted on you if you're not going to do your tartans, your sporrans, and your whiskey.
No, absolutely. But there is a Scottish band that's taking part in the Sounds of Celebration concert. So that's really cool.
Okay, we're going to hear about that in a few seconds. But Benji, talking of Scotland, have you ever been on a whiskey tasting tour of Scotland?
No, I haven't. But Howie, I'm sure that's something you have done, hey?
Of course it is. You think I would give up an opportunity like that?
Exactly.
I ate smoked salmon on the banks of Loch Ness in the ruins of Castle Urquhart while a lone piper piped down the valleys, all these misty valleys, and I sat on the banks of the loch waiting to see the monster, which I never ever saw. But
I don't even think I could get all those words out my mouth, let alone go and experience it. I'm a Northview boy. I'm a government school Northview boy. Loch Logan and all of those, like, please.
First of all, Loch Ness, Loch Lomond, but of course, you really want to go to the Eileen Donan Castle just off the Kyle of Loch Elsh. Do you think you can pronounce that? That's
definitely not. But I will ask Ant, maybe. Anton maybe is up for that, eh?
I don't know. Anton,
I'll go with you. When you're ready, I'll go with you.
Are you prepared to take me with?
Always. Love to.
Exactly.
You can pronounce all those names of the whiskies. You're definitely coming with.
Yeah, we can just come along. You can be the spokesman.
You know, the more whiskies I taste, the better my Scottish accent becomes.
Okay.
So this evening we've got a very interesting set of topics that we're going to cover, and we're going to try to do lots of little snippets in order to how to live in the society that we live in. Benji Porter, your mother-in-law appeared on the front page of the Rosebank Killarney Gazette last week with a bucket at her swimming pool, taking water out of her swimming pool. She lives in Glen Hazel. What has it been like water-wise in Glen Hazel over the last few weeks?
There's and Leon's much better position to talk about this, but practically there've been these water spills all over, and Leon will explain why. But there's like water running in the streets everywhere you go. I actually just came back from a run like a half an hour ago. And some roads you can't cross because there's so much water running across it. I know my mother-in-law is a remarkable lady. And for the record, it's better that she was on the front page of some newspapers than the back, actually, and just for the record. But they haven't had proper running water since about February this year. And so on average, they probably have for 2 or 3 days of a week. Some weeks can be worse, some weeks can be better, but I would say that's probably the average. And they've made a plan. They're remarkable. They're over 70. She goes to fetch her water from the buildings the building's pool, and yeah, they make a plan, and they caught her on the and took a picture, and she was in the newspaper, as you say.
Well, you know, a few weeks ago, we had Gigi Alcock on one of our programs, and he told the story of how his parents take them as their little kids to rural KwaZulu-Natal, build a mud hut, and he grows up as a little white kid in a rural Zulu village. And every day his mother goes to fetch water from the river, and they bath in the river. So it's almost an exact same story as your mother-in-law in Glen Hazel.
Yeah, it might not be as like stark, but certainly people in Glen Hazel have been really battling with water, and compounded with some of the electricity challenges. And that, I think, led us to having this conversation, which I know you and I, and it's quite interesting because a lot of the panelists, when I spoke to them, all feel the exact same way. There's no room for really moaning about it. Let's get on and find solutions to this stuff. And that's what I know motivates you, Howie, and motivates me. And that's why we're so super excited to hear from everyone on like, what are these solutions to some of our crumbling infrastructure?
Well, with that, we're going to ask all of our panelists, except Benji and myself, to turn off their microphones and cameras, and we'll get back to you one by one as we talk about solutions for this evening. But the time has just gone 8 p.m. And on behalf of the South African Jewish Report, want to welcome everyone around the world who's watching us this evening. We have people watching us in places like Thailand and Saudi Arabia and the DRC, Kenya, Angola, Mozambique, South Africa, Zimbabwe, all over the United States, in every corner of the United States, in Canada, South America. It's such a great privilege on behalf of the South African Jewish Report to welcome you to the 95th webinar since lockdown began. We're going to give you an opportunity a little later this evening to become a patron of the South African Jewish Report for a mere 180 Rand per month. You'll be able to participate in our competitions, in our webinars, to make sure the Jewish Report continues to publish with Peter Crossmonde, the best editor in all of South Africa. At times like we've been going through, it's so important to have a strong, credible news source within our community, and that is really the South African Jewish Report. So it's 95 webinars down, Benji. We're approaching 100. On controls this evening, we have Britt and Danny. So if we could ask you guys to turn on your cameras and wave at everyone. Danny, have you got a new shirt?
I do, Howard. I've inherited a new wardrobe. It's an inheritance. Luckily, this was someone else's misfortune. So they were a victim of shopping online, and their worst fears came true, and what they purchased did not fit them. So I have become the lucky benefactor of their misfortune.
Well, you're on controls this evening. A huge thank you to you. We're broadcasting not only on Zoom, but on 2 channels on Facebook and on YouTube as well. And Britt, you're going to be monitoring YouTube and Facebook and making sure that comments, questions are all brought over towards the Zoom channel so we can make sure we answer everyone's question.
Yep.
Fantastic. Thanks, guys. Looking forward to a really fascinating evening this evening. And Benji, as I'm sure you know, we increased our team members by an extra team member this week. So we want to welcome to the world the new Diamond, Dina Diamond. We was broadcasting on Saturday evening, and we kept on joking that she would give birth in the middle of the broadcast. Well, the day after the broadcast, first night of Shavuot, this little cute little angel was born to the Diamond family and has joined our family at the South African Jewish Report and all of our webinars. So to Andrew Diamond, to Dina Diamond, to Sienna, to Jackson, Mackenzie, a huge mazel tov on the birth of the new member of our team and our family. Isn't that cute, Benji?
Yeah, and you know, knowing Dina, I mean, Dina could have hosted tonight. I mean, she's so remarkable, and we just wish the entire family just mazel tov, and may just the baby go to Torah and Chuppah and Masum Tovim, and just wonderful things. We're all overjoyed.
Fantastic. And there is no Jewish report this week because of Yom Tov. We're taking a little sabbatical this week. But if you do want to, in fact, continue to follow us, please go to our website, sajr.co.za. You'll be able to track what's happening around the world and around the Jewish world. So www.sajr.co.za. Please go and track us there. And Benji, our next webinar on Thursday evening, we're running one on sleep and sleep hygiene.
You know, Howie, when I first started, running myself and being involved in exercise and kind of getting in the working world, it was really like a macho thing. The less you slept, the better, the more you could, if you arrived at work and you said you had 1 hour sleep or 2 hours sleep, the more you were regarded. And I think we've all seen a steady increase in knowledge and understanding how important sleep is. And we just thought in our planning session that it would be so interesting to get some experts around to talk about sleep. And I think the importance of sleep no longer is like a big debate, but to hear some of that from some real medical experts, and then to take it a bit more practical, as we like to do. So I think it'll be interesting. Hopefully we won't sleep through it.
We've got experts from Sheba University on sleep, from Wits University. We're going to be talking about how do you get a good night's sleep? What's good sleep hygiene? How do we get you better quality sleep? I think it's going to be an absolutely fascinating evening. Danny, I don't know if you have a poster for us to show us a poster about it. If not, I'm sure we'll stick one up at the end. And to all those people who are asking if they can post a comment to Dina and wish her Mazel Tov in the chat, absolutely. Please post Mazel Tov for the birth of Dina's daughter into the chat, and we'll make sure that, in fact, Dina gets all of your good wishes and greetings as well. And then, Benji, we ran a competition recently, and that competition was, in fact, 4 vouchers of 500 Rand each for the Green Side, which is this pharmacy that specializes in medical marijuana and CBD and all sorts of weird and wonderful contractions. And we said that anyone who joined our patron campaign that night was eligible to, in fact, win one of 4 vouchers. So Benji, I have 4 winners for us. Can I announce our winners? Last week we gave away 2 nights for 2 people at Mgluli Safari Lodge in the Kruger Park, which was absolutely amazing. We announced that last week, and tonight I can announce that our 4 winners are Robin Rosensack, Maureen Shafto, Clifford and Nikki Scher, and Karen Milner. So those are our 4 winners tonight. Each of the 4 of you get a 500 Rand voucher for the Green Side, either to spend in Greenside itself or alternatively the new store in Bowling Avenue in Sandton. Mazel tov to our winners. We'll get you the vouchers. Britt will make sure that you get the vouchers as well. And I'm telling you, I'm wearing my Fila hoodie tonight, Benji. You know what we're going to do? For people who join tonight, or alternatively people who have already joined our patron campaign, we're going to give away 5 Fila either hoodies or sweatshirts tonight to people who join our patron campaign or have already joined our patron campaign as well.
They're fantastic.
So before we do that, let's talk about Education Africa, and we can go ask David Bloch and Joan Lithgow to turn on their cameras, and let's talk about this amazing initiative that you guys are putting together. Hi, Dave. Let's get you unmuted as well.
Okay. Another rookie mistake. Like you'd think I'd know this. Damn it.
You having just given Joan that lesson yourself, you'll go and make that mistake.
Yep.
Thanks, David.
So, guys, tell us about Education Africa. What are you guys putting together, and how do we book?
Joan, I'll let you take this one.
Right. Well, Education Africa has been running Sounds of Celebration for the last 8. This is our 8th edition. And normally it's been a live performance at the Centre of Marcellus. But this year, due to COVID, we've gone online and global. And it is absolutely incredible. all funds that will be raised from the tickets that we're selling will help to sustain our 18 marimba hubs that we work with. We've got 80 marimba hubs in the greater part of Gauteng, as well as 3 in Kimberley. And we have over 1,000 children in a marimba program that comes to classes on a weekly basis. And we need to raise funds, make this continue with the sustainability of our hubs. So that's what happens with the funds that are raised from the ticket sales of Sounds of Celebration.
So before David tells us about Sounds of Celebration itself, just tell us, what is a marimba hub?
So firstly, a marimba is an instrument, an African xylophone. And the marimba hub is what we do is we set up a hub at a particular school or center where we, through funding, we are able to put in instruments and teaching materials and that sort of thing in that particular school. We then invite children from that school and surrounding schools to attend marimba classes on a weekly basis. And we, as Education Africa, I've got 2 wonderful assistants who work with me. We go and visit hubs on a very regular basis. We train the teachers how to teach marimbas in these hubs. And we are able to teach 33 children at the same time playing marimbas, which is really phenomenal and something that is unheard of worldwide. And once
so let's actually speak to David. Is that my microphone doing weird things, or okay, we'll swap that out. But Dave, tell us, yeah, you're that David. Tell us, what are Sounds of Celebration? What can we expect, and when is it?
So, as Joan was saying, usually Sounds of Celebration is hosted in a theatre at Emperor's. And during the pandemic last year, we decided that we would take the concert online, never thinking that it would gain the momentum that it has. So Sounds of Celebration will be taking place this coming Sunday, which is the 23rd of May. And you can purchase a ticket. Literally, it's $85. And if you're from anywhere else in the world, I hear we have quite an international audience joining us tonight. We've even said that the tickets are like literally it's £4 or I think €5 or £4.70, somewhere around there, $6. It's really cheap. You can buy the ticket from anywhere in the world. And whilst we'll be going with our concert premiere this coming Sunday at 5 p.m. Central African time, if you buy a ticket, you have until the following Sunday, the 30th of May, to watch it. So you have an entire week as a video on demand to watch in your own time zone, at your own leisure, at a time which suits you. And
tell us what it is. What can we expect?
So the concert is a concert of social cohesion. It really is a concert that spreads the message of love and understanding and tolerance through a language that we all understand and can connect with, which is music. Whilst we're not relegated now to only working with South African artists in a theatre, because we've gone global, we have everyone from our 18 marimba hubs, various youth centres from the marimba hubs performing. But we have Grammy Award winners Vota Kellerman. We have Ladysmith Black Mambazo, Joan mentioned earlier, from Scotland. We have the Queen Victoria School Pipe Band. We have artists from Israel like the Solomon Brothers, Gad Elbaz, who's now based in the US. We have artists from the Middle East, Ibir Saidani. My co-host is Leila Kardan, who herself is a former Emirates Female Artist of the Year, who's co-hosting with me. We have artists from around Africa. We have the Erdang Academy, which is one of the premier musical theatre academies in the UK. So we really are encompassing a variety of performers, all who are coming together, charging absolutely no money. I must stress that everyone that has come together to work on this concert, no matter whether in South Africa or from around the world, has done so with such grace and such a love of wanting to assist Education Africa, who produced the show in partnership with Sydenham Schule and have been doing so for the last 7 years. So our concert, the 8th one this year, is, whilst it's our 8th one, for many people, I think it's going to be their first. And what a way to do it. And I think had it not been for COVID, we would never have taken this leap of faith to go global. And it's been tremendous. But We want to sell more tickets. And like I said, it's 85 Rand. It goes toward an incredible organization to assist with disadvantaged communities and specifically the Marimba Hubs project. And it's as simple as going to educationafrica.org or heroticket.co.za. You register, you buy a ticket, and you'll be making a really fantastic contribution to an organization that makes such a difference to the youth in South Africa.
So that's exactly what we've done. We've posted links on Facebook, on YouTube, and on Zoom. Go to educationafrica.org, buy a ticket. We'll see you online Sunday evening for a magical evening of unbelievable entertainment. Dave and Joan, thank you so much for joining us this evening.
Thank you so much, everybody.
Thank you, everyone.
So Benji, we were talking earlier about our patron program. So of course we produce the South African Jewish Report. You and I are volunteers. We sit on the board. I'm chairman, you're vice chair. And we produce a newspaper every single week, except for weeks with Yontovsin, of unbelievable high quality for our community, about our community. We distribute them in 240 locations around South Africa. We deliver them to people's apartment blocks and to their townhouse complexes. We put them in Spars and Checkers and Pick n Pays and hypermarkets and Discams. And we do that all for absolutely free. We've produced now 95 webinars since the start of lockdown, haven't charged for a single webinar. You and I volunteer enormous amounts of time, as do people like Dina and Herschel and Sean, in order to make sure that we can keep our community together during these enormous difficult times. And what we would love our audience tonight to do is to join us and become part of our family. For a mere 180 Rand a month, we would love you to become a patron of the South African Jewish Report. Danny, please show us a video and then let's do a poll, and a reminder that if you sign up tonight or if you've signed up before, we're going to give away tonight to anyone who's a member of the South African Jewish Report. 5 lucky winners will receive Fila sweatshirts or hoodies very similar to mine. So Danny, please show us a video and let's stick up a poll and give people the opportunity to join our patron campaign. So Danny, please put up a poll, allow people the opportunity to sign up as a patron of the Jewish Report. If you click yes, you'd love to become a patron, or I'd be honored to become a patron, we will contact you with an email in the week and sign you up, and we will make sure that 5 lucky winners tonight become patrons of the South African Jewish Report. Become very stylish, dressed similar to me in a Fila either hoodie. Benji, you need a Fila hoodie like this, surely. When you go out on the road,
I'm not sure you and I are the best models for this. But Dina's just had a baby, and Herschel, Herschel didn't want to be part of the modeling campaign today.
Benji, apparently when I wear it like this, I look much better.
Oh, no, Howie, we like you seeing your face, Howie.
Well, thank you to everyone who has joined our patron campaign this evening or has joined our patron campaign before. Benji, at our next webinar on sleep, we will draw the lucky winners and announce five lucky winners to people who've become patrons of the South African Jewish Report.
And we're excited to give away these prizes, and also to build our family, as you rightly say. We were like considering multiple different things, and just to be part of the patrons and to build this thing together with the community is just a profound honor for all of us. So that's just something I know that the entire board feels deeply about.
Fantastic. So thank you to everyone who's joined this evening. We'll do the draw next week. And with that, Benji, let's remind everyone, if you have any questions for any of our panelists, there's a Q&A button at the bottom of Zoom, or alternatively, if you're watching us on YouTube or on Facebook, just post something in the comment section and Britt will move all your questions across. But Benji, you for a while have been saying, let's do a webinar on this issue of how do we live within the society that we live in, where sometimes you come home, there's no electricity, there's no water, you've got some potholes coming back, and yet we continue to live and survive and thrive because we found solutions to all of these problems. We've made ourselves almost independent of government when it comes to all of this. We found solutions to everything. And you asked a question to Raja Binyan, who's the economist who was on one of our panels the other day, about what would make South Africa successful. And what did he tell you?
You know, it was interesting because we asked him, he was talking about growth. And so we said, give us the steps to grow the economy. And the one thing he did say is highly functioning local councils. And obviously, from a financial point of view, their fiscal disciplines, but also that they were highly functioning. And so I think that when we were chatting about that when you counter that to the remarkable people on this panel, who you're going to hear so many different solutions to some of the failing infrastructure, I think that combining those two facts is just enormously interesting. And I think it's our obligation. Howie, I know you feel very passionately about it. It's our obligation to help us navigate trying to make these local councils and local areas more effective. But it was so interesting because that was his number one issue, actually, was that they're highly functioning local councils.
Well, we're joined by Cape Town by a proud member of our community, a member of the Cape Town City Council, Errol Anstey. Errol, you're part of the DA, which means you're in a leadership position and you're the majority party in Cape Town. For many of us who don't live in the city, we arrive in Cape Town and we're actually amazed that a lot of things seem to work. What does Cape Town get right that the rest of the country doesn't?
Well, thank you, Howard, for inviting me to this webinar tonight, and a very good evening to all the listeners around the world. May I take the opportunity of congratulating you on this webinar series you have put together for over a year now, I think, and I hope all the listeners will be taking up your appeal to become patrons to keep the Juice Report going, and I assume that this pitch won't be part of my time allocation. So, so let me start with, you know, what's the difference between a DA-run council and the rest of the country? So one, you know, obviously fraud and corruption is dealt with very seriously. And when discovered, people are fired, charges are laid. And we've had very little of this kind of fraud and corruption. Very little in the first term when Helen Zille was mayor, and now it hardly occurs now. We have a hotline for anyone to report anything there, and we often do lifestyle audits on staff and councillors. We are always investigating someone, but usually it's just personal attacks and rumors on people. And like in any business, we have fruitless and wasteful expenditure. It does occur, but in a budget of 50 billion today, which is the Cape Town City's budget, the total annual amounts is usually well under 500,000 Rand. And where possible, we actually claim this back from staff if they're found guilty of fruitless and wasteful expenditure. But more importantly, we run an open book tender system. So all tenders are opened in front of bidders, so everyone can see what everyone has tendered, and tenders are placed in sealed boxes until they're opened. No councillor or public elected person or any city staff can do business with the city. If you're a director of a company or you own shares in any company, that company may not do business with the city of Cape Town. Every supplier or tender has to declare any relatives or immediate family who may work in the city. If you're a councillor, your spouse cannot do business with the city. And if your spouse works for a company that does business with the city, it has to be declared. On Monday, the Johannesburg mayor was at the Zondo Commission, for companies he used to loot the city of Johannesburg. We employ competent staff and suitably qualified executive directors to run the city. There's no cadre deployment, no nepotism. It took the DA administration in Cape Town 6 years since Helen Zille became mayor, once taking back the city of Cape Town in 2006 to get rid of the last senior official in the city who was an example of cadre employment. We operate a sophisticated C3 notification system. which allows anyone to report a service delivery problem anywhere in the city by SMS, WhatsApp, email, or the call center. During the water crisis, we had a specific WhatsApp number to report leaks, which were dealt with within 24 hours. And before COVID, and I say before COVID, we guarantee any reported pothole will be filled and repaired within 48 hours. Unfortunately, during COVID, and due to the nearly 10,000 of the city staff being infected with the virus or being in quarantine, this time span has extended.
So, Errol, can I interrupt with a question there? Sure. I've heard it said, I don't know if it's true or not, but I've heard it said that the city council looks after the traditional white areas, maintains them very well, but doesn't spend really on uplifting other areas that were maybe deprived before 1994. Is that a legitimate criticism of what's happening in Cape Town?
Well, not really, because there are two issues. One is the city provides a basic service to all suburbs. Everyone gets equal service delivery. So everyone gets, their refuse removed, once a week or whatever. But there are a lot of suburbs which have got SIDs operating, which allow for top-up services. So the ratepayers pay an extra percentage of their rates bill towards a SID. Now, obviously, during apartheid and pre the 1980s, obviously the leafy suburbs were well established, were always looked after as a priority, and whereas the townships were always run down. So, I mean, the city of Cape Town has spent millions trying to bring the townships up to speed. So a lot of the old traditional townships had these concrete roads. They've been repaved. They didn't have pavements. We're putting in pavements, but I mean, we have a stream of people coming into Cape Town. Our population has grown to over 4 million. We expect to be 6 million by 2040. I mean, we've literally in the last 10 years absorbed 1 million new residents into Cape Town, and all these people have to be provided with various services. So we have a standard minimum for all suburbs, and there's obviously a top up. But obviously the traditional suburbs look better because they're just maintained and often maintained by the residents. So I hope you're happy with that answer.
So can I ask a specific question? Because I've always wondered, you used to drive from the airport to Cape Town into town, and there were squatter communities on either side of you. It looked terrible. Now you see concrete buildings or houses. Does that go further than the first line? What's behind that first row of houses? Is there a second, third, and fourth row of house, or are we still squatter communities over there?
No, so it's very interesting. So if you're driving from the airport into Cape Town, on the left-hand side, the shacks you see there will always be there. They are built on the original city refuse dumps. The ground is moving continuously. It's impossible to put any underground services in there. It's impossible to put housing on there. The area was, there should be no houses on there, but obviously the land has been occupied with shacks. They will never be able to be replaced. And without huge investment in removing the whole refuse dump, which was the city's refuse dump for close to 100 years. And then, on the right, you'll see that there's a continuous stream of shacks being converted into RDP housing and gap housing. And in fact, behind that is Bonteheuwel and the Lange, which is the original first black township. And it's relatively well-constructed townships. There's no more shacks, in other words. It doesn't continue inwards. But and on the left-hand side is very well established coloured suburbs and traditional coloured suburbs and Guguletu, so which has some very nice, has a whole variety of housing options. So no, we are planning to, on the right, to replace all those houses. On the left, we are unable to do much. And then, of course, we have a huge land invasion problem. It continuously happens, especially pre-election time. Like now, we have lost hundreds and hundreds of hectares of land which has recently been invaded by new arrivals, and it's very difficult to stop and control. And they in turn then immediately demand services, which is very, very difficult.
You find that in Cape Town you've got the gang crisis, as they refer to. What's your feeling about that in certain of the areas?
Oh, so gangs are they are well established in Cape Town. It's actually very interesting to know that pre-1994, the gangs were protected. The National Party wanted the coloured vote, or needed the coloured vote, to stay in power in the Western Cape. And they empowered the gangs. They protected the gangs, and the gangs' job was to deliver the vote for the National Party. And the gangs became very, very powerful in that 1990 to 1999 years, and they literally rule the roost. So it's a very great problem. I don't have a solution for it. You need a very strong SAPs, a very strong court, very strong judges. We don't have any of that at the moment.
So let's bring in Sol Cowan at this point in time. Sol, you were a member of the Johannesburg City Council for many years. You represented the ANC as a proportional representation councillor there. Explain to us some of the challenges that municipalities have in order to deliver.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you, Howie and Benji. And I'm a real fan of a lot of your webinars. I really think you're doing a great job. You asked me about challenges. Well, if we go back in history, because I can't talk about what's happening now, but I can talk what's happened there. Is if we talk about the mid-90s, when there wasn't, when the ANC just got into government, there was a first democratic election. There was a pre-interim local government where they had all the various local structures. So one of the major challenges then is, how do you integrate Alex and Soweto into the mainstream? How do you integrate Rudaport and various other areas? And obviously the idea then was to form a metropolitan local government, which happened in the year 2000. But during the interim, and something really stuck in my mind is, going through all the motions, getting people together, getting communities together. I remember having one of the meetings with some of our officials, and the one official said, and it stuck in my mind, is if you do not take at least 3 to 4% of your budget per annum and allocate it to maintenance, you will have a problem. Now, at the time, everybody needed to cut ribbons, and everybody needed to show success, etc. And it's easy to build a house, and it's even easier to build a clinic. What's more difficult is to stop that clinic with drugs. It's much easier to build a reticulation plant or tar roads, but it's much more difficult to maintain those roads. And during the 90s, when the ANC took over in Joburg, a lot of the infrastructure that we inherited was already past their sell-by date. A lot of them were built in the 60s and early 70s. So we're talking about already 30, 40 years going into the mid-90s. Infrastructure only lasts for about 25 years. And unless you are maintaining on a regular basis, eventually it'll catch up. And I think we can see it in Joburg. It has caught up. We see that, especially the older suburbs, they're replacing water pipes, they're digging up roads, they're plastering roads, they're digging it up again. And that's one of the big problems. Is how do we maintain the infrastructure and still go forward? Fast forward to the year 2000, when we had the local government elections, and I'll touch on the point of what Errol, we really have these leafy suburbs, but it's much more difficult to take the townships and upgrade them. That really is much more difficult. I mean, the one thing that we faced with is, what do we do with Soweto, which has a population of 2.5 million people, at the time, I think there was less than 10% of the whole of Soweto had tarred roads. Stormwater's drainage systems was a wish list. And I remember Mayor Musonda at the time said, you know what, this is my vision. And his vision was that by the end of 2006, we would have tarred the whole of Soweto. Well, guess what? It did happen. And what a dynamic difference it made to Soweto. Because now Soweto then became what we would call a suburb of Johannesburg. And that promoted shopping centers, business centers, new businesses, new housing, and so on and so forth. And in fact, if you take a tour today to Soweto, you'll find that where we find a lot of litter in our areas that the residents pick up, etc., you're not finding the same level of litter, etc., in Soweto. And why is that? Because there's a pride in the community. Why is that? Because they have tarred roads, they have street lights, and so on and so forth. I mean, you know, you can, whatever they say about Joburg, and I can tell you there's a lot to be said about Joburg and a lot of negative stuff that needs to be sorted out. The same difficulties is in Cape Town. If you go to Caliche, if you go to the Cape Flats, they suffer the same problems, same lack of lighting, the same lack of tarred roads, etc., etc. I mean, there's enough reports to verify that. And because of that, we underpin that by crime. I think the one thing that I learned personally as being in council between 2000 and 2006 was the inner city. And I remember the portfolio, which I thought was a poison chalice. How do we stop the rot in the inner city? How do we stop people or businesses leaving the inner city and going to Sandton because they were in the 90s, or in the late 80s, they were being offered better rates in Sandton, etc., etc. And it all meant, how do we actually communicate with our communities, and how do we communicate with investors? And that's what we did. For 6 years, we sat with investors, and I can mention two names that may be known to our Jewish community, Brian Miller and Rene Plitt, who built up major property portfolios. And what they gave back to the community through city kids, through schools, through looking after parks, that was the partnership that we had between city and the private sector. And I think that has to be the answer going forward.
So Sol, we've got time for only one more question, but it's an issue that Errol raised, an issue of cadre deployment and corruption. Now, I don't hold you to account. You're one of the elders of the ANC. You've been very vocal in criticizing your party and the corruption within the party. But in the Zondo Commission this week, we learned of the Johannesburg mayor's, looks like deep corruption between him and the company EOH. Payments into his bank account, $500,000 used for personal expenses from one company alone. The level of rot and corruption that appears to be in the Johannesburg City Council at the moment seems so deep, and yet no one's being held to account. Now, I'm not asking you to try to defend the ANC here, because I think, number one, you're not their spokesperson, and number two, you've made your position very clear. But what do we as a community do to voice voice our concerns in such a way that our city councillors understand this is not acceptable to us, and people like that cannot remain in office, and that elections should in fact boot out parties that tolerate that level of corruption? And yet it's almost gone and passed unnoticed. So what do we do?
Well, there's one word. It's totally unacceptable. If the mayor is proven to be corrupt, or even allegations to be corrupt, he should step down. He should be fired, for want of a better word. I cannot prove whether he's corrupt or not. Obviously, that's for a court of law to decide. But quite honestly, from a publicity point of view, from an integrity point of view, he shouldn't be the mayor. That's okay. Point one. Point two, what do we do? You know, we, as a community, besides going to the polls every 5 years, we can hold protests. I mean, when Zuma was president, there was a lot of the inner circle of the stalwarts of the ANC instigated protests against Zuma and the corruption and the ministers. And that's what we must do. Nobody is above the law, whether it's the DA, the ANC, the EFF, or anybody else. Nobody's above the law. And if we allow anybody to break the law and get away with it, then we at fault as well as a community.
Okay, in that case, Sol Cowan, Errol Anstey, I'll see you on the streets during our protests.
Thank you so much.
Thank you for joining us this evening, gentlemen. Really appreciate it. And Benji, on your way home, did you dodge any potholes this evening?
There are a number of potholes, but my very good friend and incredible South African patriot, Anton Ossip, who's the CEO of Discovery Insure, has started this incredible initiative, which we're excited to hear about. So if Ant, you can unmute and turn on your camera.
So I in fact, I was in Pilanesberg a few weeks ago. I shredded 2 tires on potholes within the park. I'm not holding Anton responsible. He's my insurer, and I want you to know that the service that I've always gotten out of Discovery Insure has been so remarkable that I am a true evangelist of Anton's business. True, genuine, true evangelist. So Anton, thank you for joining us. Like, what is a pothole, and why can't we fix them?
So we can, and I'll tell you about how we're fixing them. But effectively, I mean, we've heard about sort of infrastructure and how infrastructure is designed to last a certain amount of time. I think Sol mentioned 25 years. I guess it all depends on how frequent roads are used. Water is a big issue. So water sitting on roads causes potholes. When you're driving along your roads and you see those cracks, water sitting in those cracks and penetrating into those cracks eventually crumbles the surface underneath, creates a small little kind of cavity, and eventually that becomes a pothole. And if left to its own devices, becomes, a big crater on the roads that causes damage to property, causes damage to people. Many of you are cyclists. Benji, I know, is a big cyclist. This is obviously dangerous, and that's really what we're dealing with. We launched an initiative 2 weeks ago called the Pothole Patrol, in partnership with the city of Joburg and Dull Direct Insurance, where effectively we want to deal with it. We want to make a difference. We want to help the city repair a massive infrastructure. There's 10,000 kilometers of paved roads in Johannesburg. There's a huge amount of potholes and roads to fix. We want to make a contribution towards that, and that's really kind of why we launched the initiative.
And take me through, is it a proactive thing that you're going about identifying the potholes, or are people pointing them out to you? Talk us through the practicalities of it.
So we are developing an app at the moment that will allow any resident of Johannesburg to take a photograph and log where the pothole is. That's going to be developed and is in the process. But to be honest, right now we don't need that because it's quite evident where the potholes are. So we don't really need to be pointed them out. We are effectively working with the city, who have a database of potholes that need to be fixed. People have been logging it with the city. The city has been working and trying the hardest and fixing thousands of potholes. It's not like none are being fixed. Thousands are being fixed, but the numbers are large. Anything between 50 and 100,000 potholes are reported to be in the city requiring to be fixed. We're using our data as well. So one benefit we have as Discovery Insure is we got a huge database of how vehicles are being driven. And one of the kind of byproducts of that is it gives us an indication of where there may be an uneven road surface, to the extent that it's probably a pothole. So we're actually working through that data and using that data to try to identify all the potholes in a particular geography, so that when we come into an area, we try to fix all the major ones. Maybe we won't get every single one, but all the major ones that are likely to cause significant damage. And since this initiative started last Monday, effectively, where we started really getting going, we've been to a number of suburbs. So, some of you may have spotted our trucks on the road, doing their work mostly at night, to try avoid creating traffic congestion at the same time.
Okay, so give us some hope. How many? So firstly, practically, a person should, until the app is ready, report a pothole in the normal way that they have been. So that's number one.
Yeah,
correct?
yeah, exactly. There's an email address, hotline at jra.org.za. I'm happy to put on the chat line afterwards.
Thanks,
and people can use that. You know, obviously there's a huge number that's been reported, so don't expect it's going to be fixed by the next day. You know, and also just to be realistic, you know, we ourselves in Dial Direct, you know, are going to work our hardest. You know, we're absolutely committed to this. It's going to take time. We're going to do this for years. This isn't a short-term thing. You know, we're in it for the long haul, to work with the city and get, you know, our roads into better condition.
So, Anton, just to understand, you're not replacing the Johannesburg municipality. You're supplementing what they're doing. So you're just adding additional capacity. Someone notifies you. You send out Jonathan Gratch in a hard hat and a reflective vest, and at night we see him filling up the holes.
Exactly. And
actually, I've got a picture, Howie. I've got a picture of Ant filling up one of the holes. I've got that. Actually, Anton was at one of the sites sometime last week.
I did one, and then that's the last one they let me do, and they won't let me do another one.
Well, the quality control was terrible.
Yeah, it's not the kind of thing I studied exactly, fixing potholes. But then mentioned Jonathan Gratch, he's you know, done a remarkable job in terms of getting this working, getting it working quickly. You know, we're working with him and his company, who's kind of been heavily involved in this, and incredibly responsive, you know, in terms of getting to the serious ones and getting to them quickly.
Benji, you mentioned quality control, and I see Martin Greenberg has a question and says, who checks the potholes are repaired properly? And maybe as part of that, you can say, like, we seem to have potholes recurring in the same places over and over again. Is that because we don't repair them properly, or is that because that's where there's a water problem, as you described to us earlier?
I guess it could be either, but as I'm getting to understand, if repaired properly and sealed, the water shouldn't get in, or certainly shouldn't get in for a while, if done properly. So we're using technology from a company called Jetpatcher. They've been around for a long time. They've been fixing potholes, you know, and roads around the country. In fact, about 10 years ago, they worked on some of Johannesburg roads, and I'm led to believe that many of those potholes are still intact. Kind of 10 years later, they went through significant quality control processes. I mean, it's remarkable technology. You know, myself and a colleague of mine went out the other evening to kind of, you know, look at how they did it. We're somewhere in Rivonia, one of the roads in Rivonia, you know, just to actually watch the process in motion across a road and how quickly they could do the whole road. It was quite remarkable. It's not, you know, a wheelbarrow and a shovel and come, you know, someone sort of stamping it down. It's a sophisticated process, but done quite quickly. So in 10, 15 minutes, a huge pothole was fixed. You could drive over it immediately. So there was no, you know, there's no residue. You could drive over it straight away. So, you know, we're really impressed so far with the technology. You know, we're always looking at other technology as well. Certain types of potholes may need cheaper technology. You know, it's also about cost effectiveness. You know, we want to make sure we can fix as many, you know, in the you know, shorter space of time for a cost effective amount.
Right. So, and just two things. There's a question on the lines. That is a liaison with Joburg Water about fixing potholes that the water people are busy working on. I'm assuming all of that's kind of in place in the normal course of business.
Yeah, that's within the sort of ambit of JRA, working with Joburg Water. You know, we've been working with one of the senior members of the JRA, you know, absolutely committed individual, you know, incredibly, you know, devoted to getting the job done, and it's a big job. And you know, he tries to coordinate the different functions. You know, it is difficult because roads are getting chopped up for, you know, whether it's fixing water, whether it's laying fiber cables, or other things, and that leaves kind of residue and problems on roads, and that's, you know, those aren't always fixed properly. So certainly something we'd like to understand better once we get into it. Right now, we're trying to fix those big craters and get as many of those done as we possibly can.
And give us some kind of the stats, what you hope in time we'll be able to do with your partnership with JRA.
So we're confident we can do thousands. I mean, thousands in a month, you know, but it all depends on the size, you know. So if you have a big, you know, the other night they did a very, very large pothole. There were about 3 or 4 together, you know, in an area. It took a huge amount of the capacity of that vehicle in terms of fixing that. You know, where if there were, you know, maybe 50 small little potholes, we could have fixed those at the same time. But you got to do the big and the small. There's no point just doing the small. So there'll be a balance. We'll see how it settles down. you know, I don't want to give a prediction yet in terms of how many potholes. You know, it's really the team working, you know, as hard as they possibly can to get it done. You know, we're also talking to other companies potentially interested in working with us and supplementing the work that we're doing. You know, potentially residents associations that have an interest, saying, you know, it's not about the money, they just want it, they want it done. And you know, potentially we can do sort of partnerships to get more done. Because I think the interesting thing, and the feedback has been remarkable. I've never had, you know, so much interest from people saying, you know, the past is the past. This is what we need going forward. Let's fix it. Let's forget about how it happened, and let's just make a plan. And I think, as you say, I think that's what the show's all about. It's about positive solutions for the future.
And I must say that chatting to you earlier today, what you were saying about public-private partnerships and kind of all around the world really was so inspiring. And just before we let you go, just to thank you for your leadership on this. As usual, it's remarkable, and it's really a great insight into like how we can really make this country better by just focusing on solving some of the problems. And actually, I mean, I don't know if you want to kind of talk through just quickly some of the thoughts you were saying to me about those public-private partnerships and some of the team you found at JRA that are actually so committed to solving some of these problems.
Yeah, I mean, as I mentioned earlier, I mean, the individual we've been dealing with is, you know, one of the senior members of the JRA. You know, he's absolutely remarkable. I mean, he works flat, you know, he's working flat out. He's on a million different WhatsApp groups. All the councillors are sending problems, you know, his way, and he's committed to solving it. And it's not political. It's across different, you know, party lines, and you know, it's just he wants to get it done. I mean, we raised an issue with him the other day. There was one particular intersection where there was a problem. You know, it was fixed. It was fixed quickly. And you know, obviously, you can't get to every single area. The city's a big city, but I think the commitment's there. He works under relatively low budgets. The budget that he has available, given the size of the infrastructure, it's not enough. I mean, that's the reality. Is it's the budget's not enough. You know, add COVID into the mix, and it doesn't help. You know, months and months of no work done. You know, on the roads. You know, that has an impact without any maintenance. So I've been very impressed, and hopefully we can continue to work. With government in different forms. You know, as we have been doing on, you know, from a health perspective. If I look at the Solidarity Fund and, you know, all the initiatives from a health perspective, I think it's been a remarkable coming together of government and private enterprise to make a difference.
Anton, first of all, I think it's remarkable. Both Discovery and Dial Direct to be funding a project of this nature is actually truly inspirational, I think, for all South Africans. A lot of people want to know how to log things. Lionel Greenberg, who's a member of the Joburg City Council, has put one of his logging details down. But also, can you post in the chat, please, where people want to, if they want to log, where they can log at the moment? Barry Jacobson wants to know how many tarmac or truck machines do you have on the roads at the moment?
So at the moment we have two. I mean, these are high volume machines, so they can do a lot, and they're, you know, pretty expensive machines. So we've got two of them on the road. You know, as the initiative scales, you know, potentially bring in other partners, we may bring more. There are more available that can help. But at the moment, the initiative is covering two, so it can cover kind of two areas simultaneously, or it can cover one area and get a lot done. And I mean, in the last few days, I can just see though the team has been to Ravona, Gallamana, Machalisich, Strathaven, Fourways, Kew, Bryanston. You know, I'm sure they haven't covered all those areas because they're big areas, but they've made an impact. In fact, just humorously, one of my colleagues said to me the other day that the truck was in Strathaven, and she said it felt like the Big Five had arrived in Strathaven. People were that excited. So, like a sighting of the Big Five in the Kruger Park is what she said. So, you know, hopefully it'll be coming to your area soon as well.
Well, Benji, a remarkable example of corporate leadership in South Africa.
Yeah, look, I know Anton well, so it's unfortunately not surprising because he set such a high benchmark on leadership. And it's truly remarkable. And it's a great way to kick off this evening on solutions and putting our heads down and pinning our ears back on finding solutions to this wonderful country's infrastructure problems. And so again, Anne, thank you so much for not only the pothole initiative, but also the leadership that just shows all other leaders of corporate businesses what they can do to assist the country. And so post that where people can email the information or log a pothole. And again, thank you so much for your time, Matt.
Thanks, Benji. Thanks, Howard. Thanks for having me on the show.
Thanks, Anton. Sure. So Benji, let's talk about water. You have no water in Glen Hazel. Your mother-in-law's in the swimming pool, not swimming, but taking buckets of water out of the place. And a big welcome to Leon Tobias. Nice to have that side of the Tobias family on, because normally the cook sister, Leon's wife, is on our shows. I'm not saying she's our favorite member of the Tobias family, but we all have our favorites, let's face it.
That's okay. That's okay. She knows how to feed you. It's fine. No problem.
Leon, come a little forward so we can hear you a little more clearly.
Here we are.
So that's better. Benji, you keep on telling me that Glen Hazel's a little bit of a disaster, but there are solutions. Oops, did we lose? Yeah, Leon, so we just lost Leon's camera.
There we are.
So I think anyone who walks around or runs around Glen Hazel will think like there's been a giant mole busy digging up different parts. I've got my friend Andrew Lipschitz who's opening up a public pool somewhere on Summer Way because they're like digging outside his house. He's scared his wall's going to fall in. But I know Leon and I have been chatting about it. As I say, my mother-in-law in the building she lives in has got some specific problems, all related to kind of water. And so Leon, maybe you can talk us through kind of what the problems are and what are some practical solutions to providing some backup to the current Joburg water problem.
Right. So first of all, thanks Howie and Benji for putting us on and giving us the platform. Glen Hazel. So let's talk about the Chulent Belt. So Glen Hazel is being affected quite badly because it's run from the Randkiesloch reservoir. And what happens is that the reservoir has an issue. They turn the pumps off, they empty the reservoir, they then fix the pump, return the reservoir on, and without bleeding the system, they're pushing like 16 to 22 bars of pressure through the water pipes and are popping the pipes left, right, and center because they can't take the pressure. So all they needed to do was to bleed the system every time they fixed a burst, and I think you would have a few less bursts, but the experience and the knowledge of the people who are doing it are not keeping up with that. So Glen Hazel is a big problem. All the old asbestos pipes are popping, and as they do with potholes, all they're doing is instead of changing it, they're just putting on a patch and putting on a clamp, and then it's popping somewhere else. And as you've seen in Summer Way, it's been leaking for days. So we're losing millions and millions of liters of water.
So Leon, let's talk about solutions.
Yes,
let's
you called me, Benji, and we spoke about sinking boreholes. So before the webinar yesterday afternoon, I phoned my borehole contractor who actually does the drilling, the divining for me, and he said, "What's going on with your people?" So I said, what do you mean? Or he said, "What's going on with your people?" He said, "This week I've got 7 boreholes in Glen Hazel. 7. It's like a record for him." So yes, in the Glen Hazel area, if we're talking about Glen Hazel, but generally in Joburg itself, Glen Hazel, Linksfield, Orange Grove, Oaklands, even up to Illovo, Athol, boreholes are the new norm. So if one's looking to go a slightly more expensive route and have more guaranteed water, then one would go for a borehole.
So Leon, how do I know if I've got water underneath my home? Does a guy come with a weird shaped stick and go like that?
Exactly, Howard. So the system that we use is the good old fashioned Gert from Verenigen will come to your house. He's got 2 sticks, pieces of wire, a copper rod and another piece of wire that looks like it's a coat hanger that he's taken from your cupboard, and he'll walk around your garden and your property, and he'll walk with the sticks, and when he gets to an area, believe it or not, the coat hanger becomes a coat hanger. So it's not a straight piece of wire anymore, it becomes a coat hanger, bends into a circle, and he'll mark the spot, and X marks the spot, and he'll tell you that's where you've got to drill. And then from that point, he then takes his sticks again, and he tells you you're going to have to drill down 40 meters, or you're going to drill down 60 meters. You then once you've done that step and you've worked that you've actually got water, you then get a quote for the drilling. One normally drills in the Glen Hazel, Oaklands area. Your average drilling is between 60 and 80 meters, where you're actually hitting good water, good usable water. And you're looking at approximately for the drilling, you're looking at approximately 340 Rand a meter to drill. And then you would need to put in a steel casing, but the steel casing is normally only about 20 meters, which would be your soil area, your first 20, until you actually hit a hard rock. Just to cut a long story short, if you want to go the borehole route, you're looking plus minus with everything, with the diviner, with the tanks, with the drilling, water into your house, you're looking at plus minus 90,000 Rand. And I know it sounds a lot of money, but you guaranteed that water is there, it's yours. Filters, everything, water running in your tap, you're looking at plus minus 90,000 Rand.
And if you live in a townhouse complex, it's kind of 90,000 shared amongst everyone. But obviously getting the water into your home is an added expense on top of it.
That's correct. So then you may need, if you're in a townhouse complex, you may need a few more tanks. So the 90,000 may go up because you're adding a few more tanks. So if you work out, if you put a 10,000 litre tank, an average household of 3 bathrooms and 5 people in the house, so using between 12 to 1,500 litres of water a day. That's without irrigation. So if you've got a 5,000 litre tank, you would have water for 3 or 4 days, guaranteed water, if you're not running on a borehole. So the other option to having a borehole is, if you don't have water and you don't have that kind of money to put in a borehole, one could put in a sectional JoJo tank in your yard. You would then feed from the council's supply into the tank. From the tank, you would put a small pump. From the pump, you would pump it into your house. And depending on how much water you wanted, if you wanted to go for a 5,000 litre or a 10,000 litre, you would actually have water for between 3 days to actually a week.
So how much is a JoJo tank, like a 5,000 litre JoJo tank?
So if you're getting a 5,000 litre JoJo tank, so 5,000 litres basically will cost you about 5,000 Rand. With a pump, the pump is about another between 12 and 15,000 Rand, and the full reticulation. So from the council into the tank, into the pump, into your house, you're looking at about a 30,000 Rand operation. And then you've got water. And if it happens that Eskom turns off your power and you've got no power, and now your water's in the tank, and the tank has got a pump, and the pump's pumping it into your house, we fit onto it what's called a bypass. All you do is you manually go to the tank, you turn 1 or 2 valves, and then you back onto council water. Hopefully there is council water, that you'll be able to have the council water until your power comes back, and then you're back in business.
All right, Leon. So just so that we understand clearly, there's a borehole, and that provides water, and there you've got access to water. The other option, and that you can the bore you can put through your entire house, but it has to go through some type of filter solution.
So in that 90,000 Rand that we are quoting, we would do a water quality test. In the areas that we talking about, the main issue is calcium. The water is generally very, very, it's clean, so you don't need to. There's no you don't need a UV light. We would give a charcoal filter, and then a clear big blue, what they would call a big blue filter, and you would filter your water through that. It would come into your house, it would be 100% drinkable. If your water happened to be tested and it had major E. coli in it, or one of those nasties, we would then add a different filter to it to clear that.
And then the second solution is, if you don't have a borehole, you can have these JoJo tanks that can feed off Joburg water. So when there is water from Joburg, the JoJo tanks will fill up, and that then flows through the house in the same way as a borehole or anything else. I know when we were chatting about it, you mentioned that one of the things to think about is to have your JoJo tanks in a place where there are people who drive around and deliver water, actually. So maybe just tell us a bit about that.
So there is a company in Sebenza that dispenses water trucks, which we use a lot in Sandton, especially when they had, like last year, they had very big water outages. So on your tank, we would connect what's called a filler. And from that filler, a truck would come to your house. You would phone up the company. They would park outside your house. They would take a long elephant trunk, and they would connect it into your filler. And if your tank ran dry, they would fill your tank. And you would order if you wanted 10,000 liters of water, if you wanted 5,000 liters of water, and that water is pure, fresh, ready to drink. It would go into your tank, and you would have enough water.
Okay.
What's also a simpler solution, which actually you could put onto your own house if people are worried about the quality of Joburg water, which at the moment I think is still very good. We're still lucky on that side that there's still enough chlorine in the water, so we're okay. But there's something called a Wayland ring, or they've changed the name. It's now called the dynamic ring, which is actually a aluminium ring that you would clamp onto your water main as it comes into your house, and it oscillates through the water and gets rid of all the bacteria and all the funnies that's in the water, and it's a maintenance-free operation. So that actually clips on. It's a once-off. It's got a 10-year warranty, and it protects the inside of your geysers. It doesn't let the calcium build up in your geysers. And if you look at your kettle, once you boil your kettle, it's got all the green stuff at the bottom of your kettle. This ring, this dynamic ring, stops all of that. And that's I think the cost of the dynamic ring is about 9,500 Rand ex VAT, and it lasts for plus minus 10 years, and it works.
Leon, will you put your contact details into the chat section, please? A lot of people want to know where they can get hold of you and talk to you about a potential solution for them.
And Leon, just it's interesting to know that just pointing this out as you turn off your camera and go on mute, is that I got a WhatsApp from your wife who says, if you don't want crumbling infrastructure in your own home, you better bring a cup of tea. So please.
I'll have to go and see if I've got water.
Exactly. So use that delivery of water, and as people can hear in Glen Hazel, that there are solutions. I mean, they are pricey once off. And Leon, thank you so much for your insights and that. And especially on the delivery of water, I know some people who do have JoJo tanks who over the last week, how we have had water delivered. There are a number of businesses that have water, as long as you set up with those JoJo tanks and you set up in your business. And I would say, to look deeply into those solutions.
So Benji, last night I didn't have load shedding at home, but the electricity went off anyway. Errol, you don't live that far away from me. I don't know if you had electricity, but certainly from about 10 o'clock last night to about 6 o'clock this morning, there was no electricity in the area that I live in. We're back in load shedding cycles again. What on earth do we do to keep the lights on in our own homes?
I would first of all thank you so much for inviting me, and thank you for the wonderful work you're doing, and all your webinars are amazing to watch. I've got a little slideshow just to show you what one can do and how to get off the grid. I think that's really what we're looking at. If you can allow me to share my screen,
sure.
I'll quickly.
You should be allowed to be able to share.
Let's take a look. Let's see if we can
get
this.
While you do that, It's amazing that Leon's wife, the cook sister, is a regular on our show. And your wife, Lauren Boolkin, is also a regular master chef on our show. And I tasted her salmon during Shavuot, and it was absolutely astounding.
Thank you, Howard. I'm sure she'd be delighted to hear that. Well, basically, everyone, thank you very much. Just going off the grid. The main aim is obviously not to be dependent on what our favorite Eskom utility is doing for us or not doing for us. Why are we looking to get off the grid? Many years ago, once upon a time in the early 90s, Eskom was a world leader in electrical generation. They were the cheapest utility at a strike price of about 11 cents per kilowatt hour. They were immaculately maintained. They were very innovative, well managed. It was a very, very good place to work and to learn, had a fantastic plan going forward, and was highly respected on a global basis. What's changed? I think everyone knows what's happened. More and more people have been on the grid, which is fantastic. They haven't planned. There's not sufficient power, corruption, Madupi, Kasile, and those gentlemen that are somewhere in Dubai happen to take many billions of rands with. And Eskom is facing a huge debt of over 400 billion. They can't even pay the interest, let alone their overheads. They also have lots of old systems, no maintenance.
So Errol, we know the problems. Talk to us about the solutions.
Well, the solutions is, well, if you look going forward, just as I think a very interesting point, in the 90s, the increase in electricity has gone up over 1,000% in 27 years, which is quite astounding. And it's heading towards 2 Rand a kilowatt hour very shortly. The issue is we as the consumers are bearing the brunt of this, the increase in price, the load shedding, and you know it's a very big burden on the whole economy and the whole of South Africa. What is the way forward? We can either do nothing, suck up the costs, we can try and save and manage our power efficiently, or get off the grid. What is entailed in getting off the grid? You first have to do an audit with a reliable solar energy installation company that can ascertain what your requirements are. Obviously get the best technology you can afford. The Chinese option is not always the best. You know, if you want longevity, the decent quality stuff will last between 20 and 25 years. And we also have to change the way we look at power and how we manage power in terms of when we switch heavy loads on and loads off and at different times of the day. The other thing that we should be looking at is changing our heating, cooking into gas. That's a very efficient way, and it certainly saves lots of money. Just some buzzwords that I think everybody needs to understand. Power is measured in kilowatts, and the consumption is measured in kilowatt hours. A typical geyser draws about 3 kilowatts. So if it's on for an hour, the consumption's 3 kilowatt hours. Typical consumption in small, medium, and large houses, 5 kilowatts per hour. A typical day in a small house is 20 kilowatts, a medium house is 40, and a large house is in the region of about 80 kilowatts. A typical 5 kilowatt PV inverter will produce an average of 24 kilowatts a day in Johannesburg. Just to...
Sorry, Errol, what is an inverter?
An inverter basically converts the DC power that comes off your batteries or comes off your solar panels and converts it into AC, which can go back into your electrical distribution board, and so it can power all your appliances.
So if I have solar panels on the roof, I also need an inverter.
You most definitely do, unless your appliances work on 24 volts. An inverter is...
The answer is yes, I need an inverter. Okay, cool.
I have done a little table just indicating the kind of costs, the payback time, and your return on investment over 10 years. There's a grid tied and off the grid type systems. So if you put in a grid tie, that means you're only putting in a panel that will save you electricity. And you're looking at a cost of around about 90,000 Rand. You'll pay it back in 4 years, and over a 10-year period of time, you'll have a 145,000 Rand investment.
So sorry, I'm not quite understanding what I'm talking about. 5 kilowatts. If I put solar panels on my roof, what do I get? What's 5 kilowatts?
So 5 kilowatts represents a small house where your daily consumption would be in the region of about 24 kilowatt hours per day. So
okay, so just to understand, you're saying if I have a small house and I put in a 5 kilowatt solar panel system, then the cost would be about 90,000 Rand, and it would take me about 4 years to pay that back in electricity savings. Is that correct?
That's absolutely correct.
And if I had a medium-sized house, I'd probably be putting in a 10 kilowatt system. The cost would be 270,000. So it's quite exponentially higher, but the return is also about payback 4 years.
Yes. Also, with it, what I've done with the 10 kilowatt, we've actually added a battery to that. So with the first system, if your power utility, if Eskom was down, you would have no electricity. So the first type of system would only be a saving against your electricity. It wouldn't keep you off the grid. I've got a slide to show what I'm talking about in terms of what grid tied and off the grid actually looks like. So
okay, so just a big house, there's 15 kilowatts. It's got an inverter in, it's got battery system to save battery. That's going to be about 480,000 Rand, but it would take you off the grid for a big house, and the payback period, you say, is about 4 years on that as well. And does that 4 years presume Eskom price increases? Because I see they just got a 15% price increase this week. Yes, that takes that into consideration. So if you look, the systems that we're talking about is the first system that everyone talks about is a grid-tied solar system. If you can see, you have a set of solar panels, you have an inverter that's going to convert that to 220 volts, and it's going to take it into your house. The meter, as soon as you generate power on this system, the meter stops. So you're not consuming any power from the grid. If it's a cloudy day and you need power from the grid, it will flow and the meter will start turning. If this power utility switches off, so does your house. So that's obviously it's a system that saves you money, but it's not going to get you completely off the grid. So it only works during the day. It only works on non-cloudy days. And you're not storing any electricity. You're just replacing government electricity at those times when you can, but you're not storing anything. That's correct. In the future, the government is talking about a payback if you're able to generate more electricity than you use onto the grid, but they haven't worked out all the legalities with that. The other system this is the system that one needs to strive for, is the off-grid solar system. So with this system, if it's a sunny day and you've managed to charge up your batteries, you're completely off the grid. You do not need to be connected to Eskom at all if you have sufficient power. Another part of this solution is to put in a generator, so that if you need power and you're not tied to any grid, your generator will generate power so that you're completely independent of Eskom. Obviously, and Errol, looking at the table you showed us earlier, the big costs seem to be the cost of the batteries as opposed to the cost of the solar panels.
yeah, the batteries are one of the most expensive components in the system. Also choosing the batteries, you know, there's several types of batteries. There's lead acid, there's lithium ion. You know, those are the general batteries that everybody uses, and they have a very big difference in lifespan and the number of cycles. Cycles meaning from a fully charged battery to a discharged battery is called the cycle. And typically lithium ion batteries are lasting between 6 to 8 years, where lead acid are lasting between 2 and 3 years. There's a very big difference and very big cost as well.
So just give the advice, what batteries do we go for long-term use?
So the best batteries at this point in time are the lithium ion, and you also have to keep the batteries in a very cool place. If the batteries are at a raised temperature, you're going to get half the battery life. So it's, you know, you've got to keep it in a dark, cool place, and you're going to get the maximum lifespan out of them.
Okay. Errol, we're running short of time, but I know people want to contact you. Where can they get hold of you? Can you post your details into the chat section, please?
Sure, I can, and thank you. There's just typically a solar panel installation, what it looks like, some of the components, and obviously with today's technology, managing everything via your cell phone is how this whole system works.
Okay, great. Errol, thank you for joining us. Please put your details in the chat and we'll move them across to YouTube and to Facebook as well. And if you can stop sharing there.
Thank you. I'm just going to work out how to do that.
You're just at the top of your screen. It says stop sharing, or I can actually stop you sharing there as well. Errol, thank you so much for joining us this evening.
Pleasure. Thank you.
Benji, security is your field of expertise.
Howie, I wouldn't say that it's it wasn't as expertise that I thought I'd ever have, but about 13, 14 years ago, I know you wrote a lot of the initial papers, and I got very involved in the start of GAP, which is now morphed into CAP. But we very lucky to have an expert in his field, Craig Peel, who, Craig, I know when preparing for this, you and I had a short conversation, and kind of you spoke through what people should have in mind in terms of being realistic about the police. I don't know if you want to share it. I thought it was enormously interesting.
Well, yeah, sure. You know, I think the critical thing is we understand that the police have a constitutional mandate to provide safety and security for the citizens of South Africa. But the reality is that they just don't have the budget. Their infrastructure is a lot of times outdated. Lack of personnel, lack of vehicles. I think we've all heard the horror stories. And we have to be realistic in terms of understanding that we need to take direct responsibility for our own security.
And what is that, Craig? What is that? What should people be doing in their homes?
Well, you know, it essentially starts within the community, and I think Sean will touch on that more so than I will. But it starts in the area outside of your home, in the community, in the greater community. But then you've got to start looking at the boundary perimeter and say, okay, fine, what have I got? What type of wall do I have? The gates, the vegetation around the perimeter area, buildings, structures, poles, everything that potentially could be used to gain access into the premises. And you know, I'm a little bit on the grey side. You wouldn't see me doing a hop and skip and jump over a 2.4 meter fence, but there are plenty of guys who will take any opportunity to be able to climb over, and it's amazing how easily they do climb over. I think when you look at perimeters, a lot of the time the perimeter walls and fences are done more for aesthetics than for security. There will be grab holes and various different layers, which make it actually easier to climb over with. So, sometimes the perimeters aren't anything more than a definition of the boundary of the property. So the first thing is obviously looking at the perimeter. And I think, it virtually helps to sit and think like a thief. You've got to actually look at your property and say, hey, I'm a criminal. How would I get in? How would the easiest? And that is what you really got to start paying attention to. I think that.
But Craig, can I ask, an electric fence, does it work?
Yes and no. It's a deterrent, okay? But there's enough sort of evidence to show that in too many cases, the design of the electric fence wasn't done very well, and it makes it easy to exploit by either shifting the strands apart to allow someone to climb over the wall. The height of the electric fence, the structures around it, which
give us practical advice. How many strands should you have on your electric fence? Should it be upright? Should it be at an angle? What should an electric fence look like?
Again, it all depends on the nature of the perimeter. So, if you've got a solid wall, then ideally you should have at least 6 to 8 strands above. And if you are going to put it at an angle, it makes it much more difficult to climb over. One of the things I noticed very often is that the top of the wall is quite wide, and there's actually quite a lot of space for somebody to stand on there, and then they've got 4 strands virtually above that, and that really won't help much.
And Craig, with
just general thing, not a security specialist, look at the actual fence line or the perimeter and ask yourself, if you were 21, fit, a bit of a parkour enthusiast, could you climb up there and get over there? And if the answer is yes, then you're still vulnerable. So the perimeter is always the starting point.
So Craig, an electric fence, should someone have beams as well as an electric fence, yes or no?
Yes. Well, that's where we get the second part, is the early warning factor. If you're sitting in your home, you want some kind of early warning before somebody actually walks in your front door, standing at your window. You want some form of early warning. Electric fencing can help in terms of early warning, but the use of beams, the use of lighting, which comes on a trigger, whether it be a passive, no criminal wants to suddenly, from the dark, suddenly be standing in broad daylight. And then also, if you're sitting in your house and the lights go on outside in the yard, it gives you an early warning process.
Should you have an alarm with a siren on?
An alarm with a siren on, if it's just for you to get an early warning, it can be a buzzer on your, a local buzzer. It can be an alert straight from the alarm system to your cell phone. There's various different ways of getting the early warning through.
So can I just ask one more question? And then Mantis, who you with, have been amazing supporters of the shows that we've done, and we're going to see a Mantis AV in 1 minute. But before we do that, I want to ask about camera systems. Systems in your home. Should you have them? Should you be looking at the perimeter of your home, inside your home? Where should you have cameras?
I think there's essentially, sorry, I see my power is just going to go off.
Okay, how about this? Let's show the Mantis video while you connect your power. Let's show the Mantis video, and you come back and you'll talk to us about cameras.
Okay, great.
And a huge thank you to Mark Kramer and Mantis, who have been enormous supporters of this webinar series. And I think we're our second ever advertiser and a constant advertiser throughout. So a huge thank you, Craig, to you and all of your colleagues at Mantis. So let's talk about cameras. And as we do that, I'm going to bring on Sean Jammy as well and ask Sean to start with discussing cameras with us and policing the public space.
Yeah. I think the important thing is that cameras definitely have a benefit. You know, too often we hear of somebody arriving home, there's somebody hiding, you know, on the side of the road or just inside the property they drive in, there's a robbery at entry. So if you're in a position on your phone to be able to check your cameras a couple of blocks before, or make use of a service like CAPS have, where that is an alert that would go to their control room and provide a response and support. The same as when you're inside your home, too often we hear people sitting in their home, they hear a noise outside and they go outside to investigate. And that's where they get attacked. So, you know, you've got to look at how you can be in your home in a secure area and evaluate what's going on outside. So obviously the area outside the gate, the area inside of the gate, your perimeter areas, in terms of having a camera that can give you a view of what's going on outside without you physically exposing yourself to the danger, is always a big plus. And I think Sean can give you more about the type of remote off-site monitoring of those sort of cameras as an added benefit into that process.
So, Sean, you're Chief Operating Officer of CAP. Big welcome this evening, and thank you for the remarkable work that CAP does all over Johannesburg. And I know we've been in regular contact. We're talking, first of all, about policing the public space. And in January, when I was mugged and I redistributed my cell phone towards the general population, I was caught on camera being mugged. The Melrose Arch cameras got me from, I think, 3 different angles. I could watch myself over and over again in some of the most photographic, fantastic angles. It was really astounding. So do cameras help? How are we using cameras? We keep on driving past these big camera installations on the road. What are they being used for?
Yeah, so I mean, it's a great question, Howie, and thank you for having me, and thanks to you and Benji for being invaluable in CAP over the past 13, 14, and it's going on 15 years now, actually. The cameras, I explain it as a pyramid. The base of the pyramid is the fact that cameras record, and as you say, you can watch what happened in indisputable detail. And CAP's been very successful in using that. And I think the best way to describe how we work with the police and public services is to leverage their efforts. In the same way, we hope to leverage our volunteer efforts. So we understand what happened, and we work to understand who the criminals are and then try and apprehend them. Ultimately, I think what we need to be aware of is, very often people blame victims for crime and people blame security companies for crime. Crime needs to be blamed on the criminals, and taking criminals off the street is really why CAP exists. That's our fundamentals. And CCTV footage, the Vumacam polls that exist on as you say, there's a lot of them that have gone up. Those are reading number plates all of the time so that we can, once again, understand suspect movements, understand how they infiltrated into a suburb, how they left, and indeed understand who they are, once again, in indisputable detail.
Howie, I'm going to step in here a little bit because I actually think it's very interesting, because I'm a non-executive on CAP and I can talk much more, not practically. And I just want to once again thank Mark and Craig for the remarkable job that Mantis does. And I strongly recommend that if anyone needs guarding. But actually, in terms of, and I know Mark's a big believer of this as well, in terms of what's been trying to be achieved in crime fighting is an intelligence-based approach, in that almost crime is like a needle in a haystack. If you work out how much time there is spent on crime, it's not so big. And so just strategically and very high level, what's trying to be done with as much information as possible is to get the information and learn what's behavior in certain areas so that we can quickly identify unlearned behavior and then be more pinpointed in terms of the fight against crime. And as there's more and more data, and as we can generate more and more data about what we know, so let's say we see Howard Sackstein driving around in the area 10 times, that's all learned behavior. You almost can park that and you want to leave that aside. But the minute there's unlearned behavior, what you want to do is start pinging that and start identifying that. And there's lots of interesting tech that's coming. And with how strong tech is these days, to go through unlearned behavior is really like a click of a button. And can be learnt. And obviously, that's the long-term strategies, is to be a very much a tech-based and intelligence-based crime fighting area. And I think Craig and Sean will both say that all institutions are moving towards that. And it's very interesting. The more information, the more data we can get. And if you start overlaying that, and I'm not going to put Anton on the spot, but you start overlaying that with some interesting data that you can get from driving patterns and from things like that eventually, and from the police who are on site as much as their abilities can be, I think you can actually build something very exciting and something that actually fights crime in a completely different way to just a brawn challenge, where the more guns and the more weaponry we have, is that we just become more and more intelligent, and that's the way we fight. Sean, I'm sorry to step in there.
And it's like you've always said, Benj, it's more brains, less brawn. I mean, that's been CAP's mantra for many years. And I think in that vein, I've prepped a few slides. It's really not death by PowerPoint, just to give people a perspective on what crime's actually like. Howie, are you okay for me to go through them?
Yeah, let's quickly do that. And then we've got about 5 minutes left, and then we're going to move on to issues of healthcare.
Fine. So I think what's quite interesting is people have a perception, largely because of all of these WhatsApp groups and social media is pervasive. So people have the perception that crime's increased dramatically. What these graphs show, there's two lines. There's the blue line, which is property-related soft crime, and there's the red line, which is serious violent crimes. And those are the trends that we've seen over the past 5 years. As you can see, we haven't seen a marked increase, thank God, in serious violent crime over the past 5 years. And this is pretty much to date. While soft crime, we've seen a bumped increase in about 2018, but it's similarly flat. There are some interesting trends though. So if you look at this, and there really are just a couple of these slides. So what this slide shows is how burglaries, trespassing, theft, that type of incident, which is generally perpetrated by amateurs, by people who are out of work, people who don't know, who aren't hardened violent criminals, but who are really working to subsist. And you can see how that type of incident has increased in the last 4 months versus what it was in 2020. So early morning soft crime, we're seeing more of, okay? The second thing that we're seeing that's quite interesting, and if you look at that dotted blue line, that's how hijacking is trending versus something also a heinous incident like home invasions. So we're seeing an increase in hijacking, and I think it's something that people need to understand and protect themselves against better. And finally, and I know how this hits home for you, is we've seen a massive increase in soft crime, so that's burglary, trespassing, theft, property-related crimes inside cluster complexes. And I think what this talks to quite specifically is that if you live in a cluster, you really need to look after it, okay? You need to ensure that you have the right security measures. And I know it's about the technicalities, like the height of the electric fence and the security systems employed, and do you have cameras monitored in CAP's control room, and all of that sort of stuff, okay? So we really strongly recommend that people living in clusters understand the environment better and secure the environments better. And yeah, the good news, which is that it's the last slide, is that we have seen, thanks, Mark van Jaarsveld, who is our CEO, he's just done the most remarkable work over the last 14 years, but over the last year, he's been, working with the police extensively. And as a result, we've seen a reduction in follow home incidents from shopping centers of 60%. We've seen snatch and grab. So exactly the type of incident that you were unfortunate enough to experience, Howie. We've seen those reduce significantly. We've seen theft of motor vehicle and theft from motor vehicle decrease significantly. So there is good news. I think we've seen certain incidents trending upwards, but a lot of them have trended downwards as well. And I mean, just to close off, and I know we're short on time, so I'm rambling on, but the three key messages of CAP, I was part of CAP also many years ago, and the three key messages haven't changed. Call in suspicious or criminal activity to 0861 227 227. Practice defensive behavior, which means take on board all of the tips that Craig's given you, okay? And finally, we're asking people to contribute to us. So, we're busy running this fundraising campaign, which is at safertogether.co.za. CAP needs funds to exist. Thank God we've managed to keep crime contained in our communities for the past 14 years. And we're absolutely committed to continuing to do that. So we know money's short, but we'd really like people to dig deep and to support this initiative.
So I just want to run through, sorry, Benji, I just want to run through those 3 points again, if I may. There was a discrepancy between the number you gave us and the number on the slide. So I just want to double check. If you see any suspicious behavior, what is the correct number to dial? Because
I'm sorry,
what you
the
said
number on the slide is wrong. It's 0860 227 227.
Okay, so let's put that.
I'm going to put the right number in the chat. I'm sorry. This is why I should never rush. I'll put the correct number on the chat.
Okay, please, if you could. So if you see any suspicious behavior anywhere, make sure that you report it into the CAP control center. That's number one. Number two, take the appropriate care yourself in your own home to make sure that you're not a victim in your own home. And when you drive, be cautious. And I'm going to ask you in a second what that means, how you should behave at traffic lights. Should you drive with your windows open and closed? Just very practical advice. And the third element is the fact that, in fact, you're a community organization. You're a non-for-profit organization with some amazing professionals busy running it. And you are running a fundraising campaign at the moment, and it's called Safer Together. And we're going to post the details of Safer Together over there in the chat, on YouTube, on Facebook. We'd love everyone to contribute. This is the way we build community, by looking after each other all together. Benji, I'm sorry, I interrupted you.
No. So we've got one very interesting question. Say, on a limited budget, give us, Craig, maybe on a limited budget, what would be the one thing? The specific question is, would you have monitors inside or outside? But maybe let's answer it a bit broadly. What would be the one thing you get on a limited budget? And maybe you can help us with that, Craig.
I think, specifically in terms of the exterior of your house, lighting with a passive with two lights that come on when there's movement in your yard is a very cheap option. It gives you that early warning process. If it comes on, you're sitting in the house, you see the lights come on in your yard. It is one of those very cheap options that can just give you that little bit of warning that something's going on, allows you to see out without going outside. And then, as I say, if you at least have a camera at your entry point, so that you can see before you open a gate or anything, you can see outside of your yard that there isn't a particular threat that comes in. Those are the sort of areas that are probably the start points. I think there are the simple things like just making sure that you have a decent lock on or a gate on your doors, and look at your burglar guards and things like that they have a reasonable structure. A lot of the old homes have got it looks all very ornate, but it takes a couple of minutes to go through them. So you're saying
you're saying on a limited budget, make sure your lighting is right, make sure your physical security is right. If you've got a little bit more money, consider some type of camera. But I'm sure everyone will agree that every environment is very specific. And so general advice on security is a bit dangerous to give. But I think that's a good starting point. And then some type of alarm service.
And then, you know, obviously, you should never be going out to investigate any suspicious activity that may go on. Rather hit the panic and get an effective service response from a CAP response officer and get yourself secured. And that sometimes can be as simple as just making yourself a safe room in a bathroom, just putting a slightly stronger door on, maybe one or two extra locks on that door, so that you have somewhere where you can keep yourself secure until a response officer gets there and then can handle the situation. So you know,
so let's just, sorry, we are running very short of time. So Sean Jammy, 2 very quick questions and please very quick answers. A silent panic or a panic that sets off an alarm that frightens people away, which one should you go for?
You go for audible.
Go for audible, big sound, chases people away.
I mean, if you play this 2 scenarios out, you know, an audible siren, please God, scares someone away. A silent alarm, best case, is you've got tactical officers or response officers in your home with suspects. You know, it's a controversial topic, but I firmly believe in audible.
Okay. Final question, short answer. You mentioned the increase in hijackings. The question has come in. Give us some advice of how to avoid hijackings.
It's a great question, and there's no short answer. And I think Benji also mentioned it. You know, when you're giving security advice, there's many. It's not fair. You're not doing the topic any justice. Not to be more extensive about it. I'd recommend, and I think this is something that CAP's looking at, some sort of anti-hijack training, some sort of awareness training. There's some great community organizations that give some of the best security training you could ever get. So I think training, learning what can happen and sensitizing yourself to the environment is probably the best general advice I can give.
Are hijackings happening at traffic lights, or are they happening as people go into their homes? Where should you be most cautious?
Hijackings can happen anytime that you're stationary. And I think, once again, you know, trying to extrapolate why hijackings happen, etc. It's difficult, Howie, and I'd love to give you a straight answer on this. It's just, it's when you're stationary. We can tell you that they do affect high-end vehicles, very high-end luxury vehicles. Our intelligence does indicate that. And we can tell you that people who are aware generally don't get hijacked, okay? It comes down to practicing defensive behavior, understand what could happen, and then, you know, behave appropriately.
Some practical things, what that is, quickly, Sean. What is defensive behavior?
Create a 2-minute security bubble before you reach work or you reach home. So if you've got kids in the car, tell them to quieten down, switch the radio off, look in your rear view mirror, okay? Be aware of your surroundings. All too often in my sort of, you know, 15 odd years in this space, I've heard people tell a story that they saw those 2 dodgy guys outside the driveway, but they never thought anything of it. You need to just be aware, and practically it's 2-minute security bubbles, waiting in the street for your gate to open, looking in your rear view mirror, and just, you know, having this element of awareness about you, Benj.
So Sean,
robot, just making sure you don't stop right up against the next car in front of you, because if they're going to hijack you and you can't move anywhere, you're stuck. You know, so if you allow for enough space, you have the option to go forward, even if it is only to go forward 3 meters and then reverse back 3 meters. You have the ability to move. If you go too close to the vehicle in front of you at a robot, you've taken away any kind of options you may have.
Gentlemen, thank you. That's all we have time for. Really, really appreciate all the very practical advice you've given to all of us. Sean Jammy, as you leave us, just give us the website for people to donate to CAP again, please.
It's safertogether.co.za.
Thanks, guys. Thanks so much.
Thank you, Craig. Thank you, Sean. Thank you.
So, Benty, I also know that this issue of affordable healthcare is very, very important in your life.
You know how you're touching all my soft points. So as a volunteer in CAP, but also actually commercially, our business worries about legal insurance, health insurance, and funeral insurance. And recently we partnered to provide a comprehensive healthcare product to a company with, we got introduced to Kaelo, and we were absolutely blown away by the kind of offerings that they had at really affordable prices. And what we're trying to do commercially is just fill the gaps that government are leaving open to help South Africans and to help be protected. And I know John, he asked me not to call him doctor, so I'm going to follow his lead on that. I know has got like some interesting, view. I know when you and I were chatting about this yesterday, I think, in terms of the infrastructure and the kind of workforce. And maybe you can just talk just quickly about the environment that we're operating in terms of healthcare.
Sure, thanks, Benji, and thanks, Howard, and to everyone for the invite. I think the principle we're dealing with is very similar to what all the other panelists have described. It's the state has an inability to respond. However, in a healthcare setting, it's not unusual globally. This is a problem that the world faces in terms of access to affordable quality care. I think that South Africa doesn't do a very good job based on where we sit in the world. I mean, at $12,000 average income, India has better health outcomes at an $8,000. That's an annual kind of, view. So, and Ethiopia has better health outcomes than us, by way of example. So we could do a better job. And we have an excellent private sector, which is something that other areas in the world don't have, that have the same kind of challenges. So we can lean on that. And a lot of what we're doing in the private sector aligns to ultimately what the DOH and the NHR want to achieve. So I think that we're not going up against the stream almost in the same way that Craig was saying around security. We want to augment what the SAP, or you guys are augmenting what the SAP are doing. We want to augment what the Department of Health are doing. So, but the reality is that about 5.8 million households in South Africa earn less than 6,000 Rand a month. So affordability is actually at the epicenter of healthcare delivery. And unfortunately, with the state-owned enterprise issues and what happened with COVID, a lot of the focus in the capital that goes into infrastructure and healthcare has been spent elsewhere. So the state infrastructure to deliver healthcare isn't where it should be.
Well, John, I want to use an example. Charlotte Makeke Hospital has a fire, and now none of the people who went regularly to the hospital know where to go. The pharmacy's closed. They don't have access to their doctors, their medical records, nothing. So what's the alternative? How affordable is it to be in the private sector, but not on one of these enormously expensive schemes? What is an affordable healthcare cover?
So affordable healthcare cover, it would be described as something that provides you day-to-day benefits. So GP visits, pharmacy, chronic disease cover for 5 to 27 chronics, optometry, pathology, radiology, and then catastrophic risk cover, like if you're involved in some form of trauma, fall from a heart, interpersonal violence, car accident. That's the package that sits in the affordable cover cluster.
And what does that cost? Give us practically in
the range. The range of cost there would be from 750 Rand a month down to 250 Rand a month. That's the range.
So for 250 Rand a month, if I'm currently in the public healthcare sector, but I've got 250 Rand a month I can afford, what do I get for that?
So typically in that space, you'd get four GP visits per annum, which is enough. Statistically, I mean, data plays a big role here, not dissimilar to Anton's view on his thing. We use data to achieve this, but you get 4 GP visits, you get 5 chronic diseases covered, which is the 80-20 principle. Most chronic diseases fit into that cluster. You get radiology, pathology, and then you get access to hospital for trauma. So
explain this. So it's not a hospital benefit. It's primarily GPs, medicines. If I need to get blood work or an X-ray, that's covered. But if I need my appendix to come out, is that covered, or do I go into public for that?
Then you go into the public. So that would be something that, you know, it is an emergency to a degree, but you could realistically make your way to the public sector, and you could preempt that. You could say, well, you know, I'll try and find the best care in the public, and that is the truth of the fact, you know, how it is that you've got to try and provide for things that are higher frequency and more catastrophic. So what we would provide for there is, you know, private access to private ambulance response, taken to a private hospital, casualty, and then up into theatre, into the ward, and then discharged.
And that's like if I've had a car accident or someone stabs me, or if I fall off a ladder, it's an emergency cover in a private hospital, but it's not if I need to get my sinuses drained. That is exactly right. Yeah. So that's kind of the 250 Rand a month level. And I think many people have employees who may be in the public healthcare sector who maybe they want to give that benefit to, because 250 Rand a month actually is not much at all to spend on a domestic worker or an employee who has no other cover at all. Tell us, for 750 Rand a month, what sort of additional cover over and above that can one get?
So then it extends into unlimited GP access, a deeper pharmacy benefit. We have a very close working relationship with Dis-Chem, so a very deep pharmacy benefit, radiology, 27 chronic diseases covered, access to specialist visits, certain levels of maternity care. So it extends to quite a wider range of services, Howard. But it must be known that it's not a medical scheme. It sits in the short-term insurance space. So it is protected by the insurance sector, but it doesn't fit into the medical scheme space. You know?
So just very importantly, I must not expect for 750 Rand a month the same benefits I'd get for 7,500 Rand a month if I was on an executive plan on something. There's clearly something that's not going to be paid for.
Yeah.
But if you're unable to afford the 7,500 Rand a month and you're currently in public healthcare, there are alternatives to try and move you out of public and give you benefits in the private healthcare sector, alleviate the burden on government public healthcare, get you a far better service than you probably could get in public, make sure you don't have to sit for days waiting to see a doctor or days to go pick up medicines. There are alternatives, and they're very, very affordable.
That is correct. And what we do say, I mean, we work with medical schemes closely, and we have for years. If you can afford to be on a medical scheme, do that. These solutions for people who absolutely cannot. And, you know, as we know, there's only 9 million total lives on the medical scheme cover, and the balance can't afford it. And that's a market force. So it's a very important point you make, that if you can, it's not a medical scheme, and if you can be on one, do that. And if you can't, this is a very affordable and benefit-rich alternative.
So sorry, Benji.
No, so one of the points I think that is enormously important that to make is that John was making, is that, like, if you work out the medical cover in terms of what we spend most of our time on and most of the risk on, that actually these affordable covers, like through Kaelo, are 80% of it is covered for such an affordable rate. Like, if you just work out, obviously, if God forbid something more serious and it falls into that 20%, it feels like it's not helpful, but actually a lot of our risk sits within that 80%. I don't know, John, if you agree with that statement, or you want to add to that.
That is, I mean, there's some actuarial work we've done on that. Yes, that is true. If I don't want to say that's an absolute, but that is true. Most of the benefit design that we built to fit into the cost barriers that we have there pick up the majority of the morbidity that happens to someone. You know, the medical scheme responds to those very big issues, and that's why we always say if you can afford, be on it, because those are very big cost issues. But that's a very good summary, Benji, is that we're trying to pick up the high frequency and events and some of the big catastrophic unplanned events in a pooled structure that protects the group that's with us.
Yeah, and that makes it as accessible. I know we're in a similar world, is that you want to make it as accessible as possible and as cheap as possible, because of the kind of the pricing points are the issue. Sorry, Howie, you were going to say something.
No, I'm going to say we're running out of time, but there've been so many messages to say, where on earth, John, do we get hold of options like that? Keolis, they're not the only people in the space. Benji, you're in the spaces as
we're
well.
We're in a different kind of space. Keolis much better operated.
So space-wise, Keolis offices are in fact directly above my offices in Corlett Drive. Not that I've been there in the last year and 3 months, but so walk softly on your carpet. But John, please put into the chat where people can get hold of a consultant at Keolis and buy something like this for themselves, for their employees, for their domestic workers, or even the more people we can get into the net of private healthcare. Absolutely, the better it is for the individual and for the country itself. So John, if I could ask you please to post in the chat, and Britt will move all the information over to YouTube and to Facebook as well.
I'll do that. Thanks, Howard. Thanks, Benji.
Fantastic.
John, thanks for making the time. Hey?
Take care, guys.
So Benji, we've gone through electricity and water and potholes and security and healthcare, but you cannot go through the streets of Joburg without seeing guys on trolleys busy surfing down the main roads, like doing all of our recycling for us. This whole world of recycling, I must tell you, is for me a complete mystery. So Brad, if I can ask you to turn on your camera and unmute yourself. You were on an airplane when we began, but it's so nice to see you. Welcome.
Thanks, Howard. Can you hear me?
We certainly can. Before we talk to you about cycling, you also have a business called AdReach. We drive down the streets of Johannesburg. They're adverts on poles. I know that's the way I get most of my information, whether a concert's happening, an event is happening. That's all of yours. And you've got a bit of an AV for us and a special offer for people who are watching this evening who may want to take advantage of a special offer that you have for advertising on the AdReach poll network. So let's show your video, and we'll be back in probably a minute to talk to you about this whole world of recycling and the waste pickets.
Howard,
sorry, yes, Brett?
Just before you show the video, is that the video on the waste pickers? Because I'm mindful of the time you're running out of.
I was told there's an AdReach AV.
No, I'd rather just show the waste picker when we're running out of time. Britt, I've just sent you that YouTube clip on waste pickers. Let's just show the first minute or so of that.
Okay, very difficult for us. We package all of our videos before the show.
Okay. Do you want me to share, or can I not do that, Howard?
Okay, take a 1 minute, share the video, make sure we have sound, please.
Britt, are you going to do that for us?
This is Sizwe Dlamini. His day begins at 4:30 a.m. when he leaves home to collect recyclable waste in the Johannesburg suburbs. 5 hours of sorting through dustbins ends in a 10-kilometer, 3-hour trek to Newtown to deliver his load. Having only delivered one load of waste for very little money that day, Sizwe heads home. Sizwe plays a critical role in the city's waste system, and his new journey is about to revolutionize your recycling experience. The AdReach Wastepreneurs Project is a job creation initiative that will also provide a professional collection service for residents and businesses. All you have to do is leave your recyclable waste in a bag outside on the same day as your suburb's Pick It Up Day for wastepreneurs to collect. Sizwe now only spends 30 minutes transporting this waste to the brand new Wastepreneurs Collection Center at the Pirates Club in Parkhurst, allowing him to make multiple trips on one day. He is paid straight into a personal debit card or in cash at the hub. Sizwe is easily identifiable with his branded trolley and bright green branded bib and cap.
Okay, cool. I think that's.
Is that the
so
right
to save
video,
the time?
right?
Don't worry about the AdReach clip. We will save the time. Let's focus on what you called me for, which was the recycling.
So, Brad, tell us how recycling works. Because to be quite honest, this is a great mystery to me, because I've seen people recycle in their homes and they put everything in different bins and they put them outside, and then the pick it up truck comes and throws everything into one truck and drives away, and people are just very confused.
So first of all, I'm not a professional recycler or in waste management. We run this one site as a purely non-profit initiative. And we're hoping to eventually find one of the big waste guys to take on the waste pickers. For about 10 years, I've been trying to do that. No, not 10 years. 7 years, I've been trying to do something with the city and pick it up. And it's proved pretty difficult to get that off the ground. We're still trying. But I think that what we're looking for is to ultimately get someone in serious waste recycling to take on the waste pickers. You're absolutely right. The pick it up trucks, I'm sorry to say, if you are separating your waste out, unless one of those green trucks gets to your site, the pick it up truck bangs all the waste into one truck and it goes into a landfill by and large. So it's not, recycling is not happening properly in Johannesburg, other than for these incredibly hardworking waste pickers that genuinely do recycling, because they're only paid per sorted product. So they would arrive before the trucks, typically, before the pick it up trucks. They would painfully go through your waste. They would separate out the valuable recyclables, and they would bring it up to our site in Parkhurst, where we would give them what they would otherwise get at a recycling place in Alex or town. And by virtue of being in and around the suburbs, they can now do 2 or 3 trips a day. So instead of earning R2 a kilo, max you could pull is about 90 kilos. You can do 2-3 trips. Your income goes from 200 Rand to 400 Rand. But in getting involved in this, we've stumbled upon something which could be a world-class initiative, because sadly, we've got people that are prepared to sort waste at source for R2 a kilo. And no matter how sophisticated the waste structures are overseas, no one achieves a zero to landfill structure. In South Africa, if we worked with Pick It Up and commercial guys and the waste pickers, we could probably get to a zero landfill situation, as well as making all sorts of incredible things with the waste. You're talking about potholes. At first, you could actually repair. You could pelletize the plastic, and you could repair potholes or resurface roads with waste. There's 100,000 of these guys around the country, probably a bit more now, working in the most undignified conditions, often at land at sort of dumping sites that you wouldn't have seen. And very, very disciplined guys on the whole, hardworking, and together with the sort of pick it up structures or some of the bigger waste companies, you could do an incredible collaborative and achieve I reckon you could probably achieve a zero to landfill situation in South Africa.
So tell us, the project that you're busy running, what's the catchment area, and what do people within that catchment area do in order to take advantage and make sure they have a better life, they're able to make more money, and in fact, they can use products without conscience?
Okay, so it's essentially probably a sort of 5K radius around the Parkhurst site, which covers all of the parks areas going up towards Hurlingham, and around towards, kind of heading towards the Parktown area. So it's very simple. If people would just separate their organic waste, food stuff, and the rest, the waste picker would then come along, from the rest. They wouldn't be scratching around your bin and all of your food stuff. They would just be looking at what we would define as recyclables. They would pull out the valuable stuff. Some stuff's not valuable to them. They would leave the stuff that they can't make money on in that second packet. And when Pick It Up came, if we could just get Pick It Up to separate their trucks into two components, one for organic and one for non-valuable recyclable, we could achieve a waste solution. It's been hard.
In the interim, until Pick It Up does that, what bag do people use for their recyclable as opposed to their organic waste?
Okay, depending on what suburbs you are and how efficient that suburb is operating, or Pick It Up's operating, they're supposed to give you a green bag. If people could just separate their food from the rest of their waste, that would make a huge difference to the waste.
So what's in the green bag and what's in the black bag?
I better not get it the wrong way around. I think the black bag is organic and the green bags is the recyclable stuff. I could actually be wrong, ironically, but it's.
So we think at this point in time, if they deliver you a green bag, you're in a recyclable area, put all your recyclable stuff in that. And let's talk about what is recyclable. I presume paper, glass,
glass, all the plastics, aluminium. The only thing we don't do, because it leads to theft, is copper. So we won't accept any copper from the waste pickers. But forget about the cut of the bags. If people could just separate out their food from the rest, no more complicated than that. The waste picker would come and take the rest, which is all the stuff you've just mentioned. They know what's valuable and not. Unfortunately, glass, they only get 20 cents a kilo, and certain of the multi-layered plastic, they don't get any money per kilo, and they would leave that behind. They're not going to recycle everything, but they would do, with people just separating their waste out, they would spend, instead of 7 or 8 minutes at your bin, maybe a minute. And your bin would look a lot better, and it would make their lives a lot easier as well.
Absolutely. So let us just once again get down to the details. These guys, how much money do they earn a month?
Okay, on average, they get about R2 a kilo. So you can pull a trolley, you can probably manage about 90 kilos, which on one trip you'd make about R180 a day. But because we now have a site in Parkhurst, they can make sort of 2 or 3 trips, so you can get towards R300-400 a day. That difference of R200 to R400 is huge. At the R400-500 level, you start being able to afford something like that low-cost health insurance that you spoke about. So it's an incredibly significant jump in these guys' earnings. If I can just show, can I share, or is that problematic?
No, please share.
Okay, so can you see that?
No, you're not sharing anything.
Okay, hang on, let me try again. Where on earth is this now?
Okay, looks like you're sharing something, but we're now busy watching your WhatsApps.
Can you see
that? Yeah, that we can see.
Okay, so basically all we've done at this point is we've taken people that used to have to walk from, I don't know, Parktown North to Alex or to town, and we've put a buyback center close by, so they can now do, instead of 1 trip and earn R200, they can probably do 2 or 3 trips and earn R400. The real exciting stuff, which is beyond what we're able to do as a non-profit, is if you were able to roll out 10 of these sites, which the city's been promising for years, but eventually, hopefully, we'll pull it off. If you're able to roll out a site, for example, in Bryanston, where guys are squatting and living illegally, and you formalize it and got them out of the informal environment where they're sleeping into proper housing, and you put a third site, say at Melrose Arch, eventually, if you had 5 or 6 sites and you were aggregating the waste, you'd be able to bring each of these guys higher up the waste beneficiation triangle. So you've got, when we did this diagram, 60,000 wastepreneurs, as we call them, probably 100,000 today. If you could take all of them around the country and just improve their income by double by putting sites close to where they operate, and then the best of those would work up the waste beneficiation triangle and get into things like pelletizing. And then from the pellets, you can make plastic packets and pool noodles, and you can repair potholes. So there's all sorts of secondary industry that could develop from this. These guys could also be peace officers. We work with the Parkhurst police station. Contrary to what people might think, they don't want to do crime. They would lose their license to work with us. They know your road often better than you do. They could each have they do have cell phones, but we could upgrade it. There's 10,000 of these guys in the greater Johannesburg area. Can you imagine what they could do for our security if you just worked with them properly? So there's a hell of a lot.
So Brad, a wonderful example is the Dharavi slum in Mumbai, where in fact waste is an entire industry. And it's a kilometer by a kilometer. And the people in that, first of all, there is no crime at all, not a single bit of crime in the Dharavi area at all. But waste and waste recycling is a huge business opportunity for the people there. Let's just unsave, I'd stop you sharing over there because we are running short of time. Okay. So Brad, are you looking to roll this out more? Are you looking for assistance? How can people help you? Because this seems like a commercial idea. It seems to be an uplifting idea. It's good for the environment. It's good for the people. It changes neighborhoods and societies. What are you asking people to do and to help with?
Okay, so if the public could just separate their waste out, that would make a huge difference. And if there's someone out there genuinely looking for a business opportunity, a hard opportunity, but a business opportunity to roll out these sites and to ultimately set up a recycle center in, say, Wynberg, and take this on to its natural progression. We've got FNB that's backing it. In fact, have I got time to share one more diagram, Art?
Okay, very, very quickly, Brad, because it's nearly 20 past 10 and right, people have been with us.
Show you just basically if there was someone who was able to take this on, if I don't find it right now, I think we better just leave it. Where's that bridge? Yeah, basically what you want to do is you want to get people in Sandton to give opportunity to people that live in areas like Alex. And this is just one part of a broader picture of trying to get big business to support little business. If people who own little businesses were able to allow these waste pickers to collect their waste, that would make a huge difference for people listening out there and for people at home just to separate out their waste. And then potentially as a business opportunity, if someone wanted to take this on and take it to the next level, there's an opportunity here.
Amazing. Brad, it is absolutely God's work that you're doing. Absolutely amazing. I want to, for a second, just talk about ad reach. Because you're giving people an option and a big benefit tonight, 50% discount to advertise on some of those street poles that you have around the country. Can we put up a poll just if people are interested so you can get their details and they can contact you and get a 50% discount on advertising on street poles?
Yeah, that's fine. So I think what we said is anyone who came through the show, we would give a 50% discount.
Yeah, so if you are in the space looking for advertising, we've just put a quick poll up on the screen. We'll run it as well another time as well. But absolutely, let's take advantage of this amazing opportunity since we've had Brad on the show this evening, and let's try to see how we can improve our cities, improve the lives of people, and change society around us. Brad, thank you so much for joining us this evening.
Thanks for a great show. Thanks, Howard.
Brad, well done. Hey?
Benji, that was quite a lot of information we've imparted tonight.
You know, Howie, when you see someone like Brad and the rest of the panel and the work that they're trying to do to help this crumbling infrastructure, it's really so inspiring. And you know, I think that's the message. The message is that just look at this kind of panel who have looked and seek solutions to trying to solve some of the biggest problems that there are in this country. And actually, that's what entrepreneurs do, and that's what people do who help solve problems. So yeah, it was lots of information. I'm sure we could have had a webinar on each one of these things. We just thank you to the entire panel and for making the time. And we are very sorry that we ran late and took up everyone's time, but I think it's important information. And more importantly than the information is the message that even though there is crumbling infrastructure and no one needs to pretend that there isn't, there are so many things we can do to help fix it. And yeah, reach out to these guys. I tell you, each one of them are patriots and each one of them want to make a difference.
So, Brad, we're getting so many comments about you on the chat. Please, can you put in your contact details so people know where to get hold of you? I think that would be fantastic. But Benji, the lesson that I take away this evening is that no problem is not capable of solving.
Definitely.
And it's up to each one of us to go find those solutions, make them work in our own lives, and continue.
Exactly. And we might all turn into pumpkins if we carry on like this.
So we're going to end now. If you haven't joined our patron campaign, we're going to give you one last chance this evening to join. Don't forget, we're giving away 5 Fila sweaters and hoodies like that this evening to members of our patron campaign. We'll announce the draw on Thursday, and we will, in fact, see everyone on Thursday night, Benji, when we're going to be talking about sleep, something that we've deprived everyone of this evening.
Exactly. We will hopefully make it really interesting, and there's some really fun and interesting panelists. So we look forward to seeing you all.
Danny's busy saying Saturday night, but I think it's on the 27th, is it not?
Yeah.
27th it is. Cool, guys. Yeah. See you next week.
Thank you very much.
Ciao, bye.
Shabbat shalom, everyone.